Good morning, everybody. How are y'all doing this morning? Oh, wow, you guys are kind of quiet and subdued today. All right, it's going to be that kind of meeting, huh? It's not a funeral, people. This is just an RTC meeting. Well, I want to welcome everybody to our November regular meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission. This is going to be an interesting meeting today. I got to tell you. First of all, Madam Clerk, let's just get started with the roll call. How about that?
Oscar Delgado.
Here.
Von Hartung.
Here.
Ron Smith.
Here.
Neil Majardin.
Here.
Bob Lucy.
Here.
Lee Gibson.
Present.
Dale Ferguson.
Here.
And Christina Swallow. Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right. And Lee, you're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning, really quick.
My friends in the audience, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Freudian slip.
You don't get to do that very often, do you? Oh, it's interesting. We're going to make Lee work extra hard today since this is going to be his last meeting with us. And with that being said, I want to take a minute to recognize the gentleman next to me. We have some special recognitions that we'll get to in a second, but this is the man we want to talk about right now. So I want to take a quick minute to recognize the gentleman next to me. As you can see, with his last 10 years that he's served here at RTC as our executive director, I've had the pleasure of spending the last 5 of my years with him, and that's only a fraction of the experiences this man has imposed on many of us within this community. He's truly a regional treasure. He is the man that has been leading the charge here at RTC for 10 years, but for decades within the transportation industry across this state. He is somebody that you can constantly turn to for a witty comment here and there, but always a guiding spirit that really truly brings life not only to his staff, but to the regional partners that he works within. I've seen him on the federal level, the state level, and the local level, and every place that he's revered by many. And as you can see within the audience, there are many people here to celebrate this man sitting next to me, and it's been my great honor to serve and work with him, and many times call him my mentor as it pertains to the way he has taught me and guided me through the maze that it is in today's society. So thank you, Lee, for everything that you have done for RTC, for the state, for this region, and for me as a member of this board. So thank you. Go ahead. Please.
Thank you. That's touching. I was going to do this at the end of the meeting, but I guess I'll do it now. I want to make a few, look, all of that is not about me. It is about all of you who are the staff and our partners out there in the audience. Virginia Street, which is, hot on topic. Where's Dan? I don't see Dan LeBlanc out there. There he is. Dan, Angie Huffley from NCE and all of that gang, those are the people that make that stuff happen. Let me pick on somebody else out there. I want to pick on NDOT. One of the things I'm really proud of when I first got here was NDOT had really no voice in our role, in our process here. And so remember that, Ron? We drafted a resolution and we appointed the NDOT director as an ex officio member to help provide the state the opportunity to participate in the Metropolitan Planning Organization's decision-making. I am grateful to every NDOT director who served, and Christina, as you know, we were neighbors for a while in Southern Nevada, and your husband and I worked together and got to go to France quite a bit. But I do want to have special recognition for Susan Martinovich, who was the first NDOT director here. She was a special mentor to me. I knew her in my private sector life. She really coached me through a lot of how to deal with heavy civil construction issues. But the people that are really close to me, the people I always admire, I always come back to this one guy down at the, well, he's not at the end. He's near the end. He's 1, 2, 3 people over, Ron Smith. So Ron Smith, how many of you, I don't know that many of you know this, Ron did not vote for me. And he reminds me of that every year of my evaluation. Lee, I didn't vote for you, but he is the longest serving member of the RTC since I've been here. And Ron taught me a very important lesson, and this is why I'm going to acknowledge the next group of individuals. He said, you know what, when someone votes for you, you need to remember that person. And I want to acknowledge and thank Dwight Dortch, Bob Larkin, David Humke, and David Ayazi. Those were the guys who hired me. And you know what? When we got started, Ron, and I don't know if you want to jump in, but things were tough here. We had some very, very difficult challenges in front of us. We were at a major pivot point, and the agenda was long. It was really a difficult time. But the other thing I want to do too is just take a moment, and I want to acknowledge Greg Krause. Greg was the executive director before me, and being an executive director, and I can remember meeting Jerry Hall in 1989, the guy who hired me in Southern Nevada, a guy named Kurt Weinrich. He and I got on America West. How many of you remember America West? And we flew up here to meet Jerry and Greg and Bill Derrick, and I think Jickling wasn't here yet, because we were getting ready to do the ballot initiative in Las Vegas for a transit system. So we came up and we met Jerry and we talked to Bill and got to learn everything. I got a tour of the Villanova maintenance facility, and we had just a lot of respect for Jerry, and the idea that I would one day occupy Jerry's office just really blew me away. But the point I'm trying to make is there's an arc of being an executive director. Greg set the path for the success we experienced here with the fuel tax indexing initiative. I don't know what legacy maybe the next executive director will say about me, but we're all, you saw the picture of all of the former executive directors. We're sort of a family, a team. We get together. I ran into Jerry at David's going away, and I loved what Jerry said. He said, isn't it funny how when the bulldozers show up, everything gets quiet? It's kind of true. I also have some other folks I want to acknowledge, some who are in the audience, some who are not, and some names who you will not recognize. I want to thank my very dear friend in Las Vegas and with HDR now, Sam So. I want to acknowledge my friend Bardia Nazadi, Tom Jenkins, Kent Woodman, Jane Stark, Anya back there? Sandra Rosenberg. So before I call you, Christina, I will call Sandra and I will engage in intellectual sparring. And I appreciate that. Adam knows this very well. Dale knows this. Jane knows this. I admire the Socratic approach attorneys take. I think you always have to go in and really dissect problems and walk them through and look at them from different angles. And those folks are just a few of the folks who've helped me get through that. I want to thank Amy Cummings. I've worked with Amy for 16 years. She keeps me focused on excellence, community participation, and what I think is her virtue, patience. Michael, where are you, Michael? Where'd you go? There you are, stand up. Now, Michael is the guy who reins me in when I'm ready to go over the top, and he knows it's not a good idea for me to go over the top. But last but not least, I want to thank a Reno native. I actually had to go get her birth certificate the other day. Mr. Hartung assisted me with that, but I want to thank my wife, Maria, for her support during my career. And we work in an industry where, I'm not kidding you, the best fiction writers in America cannot come close to imagining and writing about the events we experience, all of us, in our day-to-day work lives. I know people think what we do is really geeky and odd, but come on, folks. it's better than fiction sometimes, and I think that is what makes our business so enjoyable, unbelievably fun, entertaining, but most importantly, for citizens, taxpayers, users of the transportation system, it makes it rewarding. And I think that's what I'm really most proud of is I've had the unique opportunity to serve Nevada, both north-south. I've helped provide for public transportation. I've helped build highways. But I like to think, most importantly, wherever I've worked, I've left a solid group of people who are look, I'm not a smart person, but I go out and I hire smart people. And I just want to thanks to both staff that's here today, but also staff I've worked with throughout my career, how much I really appreciate your support and your work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Well, I want to give the board, the rest of the board, obviously, Mr. Mayor. I want to give him the opportunity, being the longest sitting member of this board, to reminisce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's true, I did not vote for Lee. I was the only one that didn't do that, and I remind him monthly, I guess, on that. But Lee has turned out to be one of the best directors we've had. I've been on the board since 2006, the first 2 years as an alternate, and the last, since 2008, I've been the member from the city of Sparks of one vote. And I always tell a story that, and I probably shouldn't say this, but for many years, I got everything I wanted because the county and Reno would fight with each other, and I was a swing vote on everything. So it worked out pretty good back then. Not so much these days, but I've been with Lee in Washington, D.C. I would hang out with Lee once in a while. He'll call me 5 times in one day, and pretty soon I just put it on. I can't talk right now. I'm having a glass of wine or something like that, and he'll call me, and I go, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I'm on my first scotch." So I just can't say enough about what Lee brought to this organization. Lee a presence when he comes in the room. And I don't care who we hire, you're not going to find that presence that he has. And then if you can imagine if I had hair, he's always going like this, and his hair's all over the place. And he truly is a geek. But a lovable geek, and I want to thank you for your service with this, Lee, and I hope that your retirement brings you health and peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we said a couple of words at the council meeting on Wednesday when he came and gave his quarterly report, and one of Lee's really strong attributes, and any of you that have come to certainly a city council meeting, those can get kind of spicy and can get, spicy is a delicate term. And Lee, in the face of some really, I would call at times, aggressive and inappropriate jabs, always kept his cool and his decorum and his professionalism. And I always admired that, and actually was a little envious of it, because sometimes I don't always keep as calm as that. But I think what that did is it gave a level of professionalism that people respected you for that, because I think everybody else saw what was happening, and your response to it could have been so different, and you always stayed so calm. And the fact that you can navigate through all the different political waters at all levels speaks volumes, because your personality knows what the playing field looks like. You know the players, and that's a true talent that I think we will very, very much miss. I will say this about Lee. He knows for 7 years, I think. Yep. Between 7:30 in the morning, he would get a phone call. And it was always for me to do a check-in, see what was happening. Normally I was teaching my son to drive, and we'd do our morning check-in, and it was always, "Good morning, Neoma." And it was always a kind of this. And so I joked yesterday, I called him at, I think, 7:15 or something, and I said, "I have nothing. I'm just calling because you're going to miss these phone calls." One day, but he never, I don't think you ever didn't answer the phone when I called, and I appreciated it. And I'm sure there's times that he questioned some of the harebrained initiatives or ideas that I brought to him, but he always entertained them. And many of them have been great community things that were outside the box of traditional RTC function, whether it was the Stuff a Bus for seniors or the Pink Bus for breast cancer, or entertaining the double-decker bus for Virginia Street.
That's coming.
That's coming. But these are all things that he didn't have to do, but he understood the importance of community connection and bus passes for our most vulnerable population. And I appreciated that, because that was very much outside the lines of something that he really had to do. But I think that builds trust in the community. And I valued you stepping outside of that. And I get a little emotional, because you didn't have to do that.
My only comment is, I love spicy. I'd like to make, I think everyone knows I'm from New Orleans. And everyone knows I'm from Louisiana. And there's an old saying in Louisiana, we like our food and our politics spicy.
Well, then you got it here.
That's why I like it here.
Yeah. So anyway, I can't thank you enough. I mean, you really have made me, over the 7 years here, feel very much at home, and you have moved our community in so many beautiful directions that will stand for generations to come. And of events, witnessing them, I'll never forget during the floods when the Southeast Connector was being constructed. And we went out with the governor, and we were observing how the Southeast Connector was holding up during the floods. And I'll never forget, we were standing overlooking this meadow area, and we proceeded, as the governor was standing there, we watched this red truck drive down a frontage road right into the floodwaters and proceeded to flood with the governor and with Lee standing there. We were watching it real time, and it was just, I'll never forget that moment. There's been many, but I truly will miss you. I think you have done wonderful things for this organization, and more importantly, for this entire region.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm one of those people who have been involved with RTC for many years. I remember Jerry Hall. He's still a very dear friend. I remember Greg Krause, Derek Morris, and working with them. And then Lee, when you came on and this is not a pejorative comment about them or what they've done, but when you came on, you were more, you were more accessible, I'll put it that way. And it probably has something to do with the fact that you probably don't know this, Lee and I are twins. Same year, same month, we're just a few days apart. You've seen the movie Twins. He's Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm Danny DeVito. And so we always, every year, we sort of commiserate another year. But my birthday is not here yet, so you are older.
I am.
I want you to.
And wiser.
Perhaps. You're the one who's retiring. So I'll give you that one. But Lee's always been very approachable. He's always been concerned. He's always been on the forefront of looking at the community and trying to spread the budget throughout the community. And that's a tough thing to do. I mean, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. One of the things I've always admired is his ability to speak off the cuff and fluently in any scenario, regardless of how spicy it is. And I've watched you time and time again where you were able to answer extremely difficult questions with a great amount of detail. And you did it so well that even if the detail was wrong, you pulled it off well.
Thanks, Vaughn.
It was just so fluid, and that requires a mastery of the industry. So Lee, you will be very much missed. I mean, there's just absolutely no question that your fingerprints are all over this community. It doesn't matter whether it's a road or in the transit system or in the way that planning has occurred, because all of that goes back to transit and transportation infrastructure. So I thank you. I thank you for everything that you've done for our community. And I'm assuming you're not leaving? No. So good. So now that you're retired, Bob and I have decided you have to buy. When we go drinking, you have to buy. So, because you're the retired one and we're the
He
working.
drinks expensive stuff, you know.
I know.
I'm actually well aware. That's why you're buying. So again, thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure to serve with you, and you will be missed by a number of people in the community. I will just tell you that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I think as the newest member of the board, haven't necessarily had the formal opportunity to work with you formally over these last few years, but I have. And that's one of the things I appreciate about you, Lee, is I didn't have to sit on this board in order to work with you in terms of community projects, and that speaks to who you are, speaks to your team, speaks to your leadership, is that you didn't have to be a board member on RTC to get out and share your concerns and ideas, and it was something that I appreciate tremendously in terms of just pedestrian safety, community input, community outreach, and making sure that projects are not narrowed and focused in terms of one person's agenda, but a community-minded, and that's something I truly appreciate, and I look forward to whoever we end up choosing. And along those lines, it comes down to clearly displayed by your team here is your leadership skills. And you said it earlier on, is you got a great team around you, and that's all displayed and dictated by the leadership, and that's what you presented all these years, which is something I've always appreciated. Is you keep community-minded, your staff is thoughtful, your staff is forward-thinking and very progressive about where we need to go as a community, transit-minded, and it's something that I look forward to and something I hold up very much clearly to all other jurisdictions and other organizations that I work with, is saying, how does RTC display themselves? How do they surround themselves with those ideas? And even if they're not always met at 100%, at least they're displayed and put on the table so we have discussions. And I truly, truly appreciate that. As a planner to planner, thank you for the opportunity to work with you. And I know this is going to be the last time we're going to be working together. So thank you, and thank you to your team.
So, I mean, those are some tremendous comments from just a portion of, I mean, obviously the current board, but I'm sure there are many, many members out there that have sat on this board next to this gentleman and will share the same sentiments time and time again. So with that being said, what I'd like to do at this time is present Lee with a token of our appreciation from RTC for his time here at the RTC. And we've got him a little memento to take with him. It's nothing huge, but it says, for 10 years of service, Lee Gibson, Executive Director, thank you for all your hard work and dedication throughout the years. You will be missed. On to the next chapter, and we wish you all the best in your retirement, and look forward to all the great things you have in front of you, for you and your wife, and everything you've done for this community. So thank you. So what I'd like to do now is I'd ask everybody, friends and colleagues and everybody to please come down and join us in the well. What we do is we'd like to take a picture with Lee here now and in front and kind of commemorate this moment. So thank you. Big round of applause.
Call me at 7:15. No, I wanted to say,
I still
you
will
call
call
at
you.
7:15. He calls me at 7:15 PM, 12 hours later. Okay, we're not gonna cry. No. We're not Sandoval.
Hey, nothing wrong with crying.
That's right.
Nothing wrong with crying.
We're twins.
Embrace it.
You know what? I wish, you don't have to, I do regret. I never lived in Chick-fil-A.
I know.
But you have to go down in front. You have to go down in front with all the people.
Come on, you too.
No.
We're gonna stand up here.
Turn sideways, everybody. Turn sideways into the center and squeeze in. Otherwise, we're not all
Yeah.
gonna fit in.
We should probably fill some people up top.
Plus you look thinner when you stand sideways.
I was just saying, just make
You
sure.
want to do that, Bob? You want to get some people up here? Taller. If you're tall, come in the back, except for Lee.
Liz has been so gracious to take a photograph, so please keep your head out between shoulders, so you're not behind anybody's head. Liz, I'll be on you.
Yeah, we're gonna all have to, we may have to do another row.
Well, we should have some of these people come
Come on,
up.
some of you tall guys, come on. Why don't you guys come in the back?
Come on.
Yeah. Dan, John,
Adam, Spear, get
Porter.
over here.
Congressman,
Guys on the ends, stretch in. We don't have official.
turn sideways.
Sideways.
Get friendly.
Friendly.
Because in that way you've got the elevation.
Yeah. Send some, Michael.
Hey, he's the
Send some people up top here.
photography guy.
Put Porter behind you because he's tall.
Yeah, Porter, come here.
Dan behind you. Hey, Jay, get in here.
Like, this isn't a 101 level.
Start.
Yeah, this
Come here.
Awesome event.
Yeah, good, yeah.
Stand right here.
Hi, John, how are you? Good to see you.
Get up here. You get right behind Lee and get in front of John.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh my
James, good
goodness.
job.
All right.
Totally. She's gonna have to stand up on the diet.
Yeah, get Michael.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Do another one, I think I blinked. I think it's gonna matter, right?
That's okay, that's fine.
There's like 60 people in the crowd. It's gonna matter if I blink.
That's how you quiet a room down.
Right.
Grab a camera.
All in favor?
This is
You
my
know she
better
wants to
side.
jump up on that table.
Yeah, now we're talking.
I think we're good.
No pressure.
You are asking questions.
Nice.
You gotta be careful. Good to see you, man.
Hi, beautiful. Don't shake my hand, I'm sicky. I got the Oogie Boogies. I got the Oogie Boogies. But you know, you have the kids. I've had it for two and a half weeks.
Yeah, and we haven't gotten our flu shots yet.
Well, it just keeps like it's going around the house. It just keeps recycling between the
And then the
kids.
cough lasts for weeks.
Yeah, miserable.
Have you had a flu shot yet?
No,
Me either.
I don't know. Here, do you want this? Well, thank you, everybody, for indulging us for that. You know, it's always fun to put him on the spot and make him a little embarrassed. I mean, trust me, we'll have a social party sometime later where we can all share really the fun stories about him that's not on the public record.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I have two people I want to acknowledge. I want to acknowledge Denise Thompson. I have watched your daughter grow up. I remember when she came and did the Pledge of Allegiance when she was, what, 6? And Madison is now 16. Now, what y'all got to realize is, I got that door between my office and Denise does not hesitate to let me know what she thinks. And I appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge Jane Stark. Where'd you go, Jane? How long have we known each other? How old is Jake?
27 years.
Yeah, I've worked with Jane off and on for 27 years. She's the best lawyer when it comes to federal transit issues. I want to acknowledge her from the perspective when we did the transition from the old model to the new model. Jane really helped us save a lot of money when it came to transition cost. And I'm always indebted for your insight, wisdom, and help. But anyway, and let me just see if there's anybody else. Of course, the director team, Brian, Angela, everybody on the director team, Stephanie over there. Boy, Stephanie is, Stephanie won my heart when I first started. She said, "I'm here to stop waste, fraud, and abuse." And I'm like, right on. So anyway, and I'll probably go through the meeting and think of somebody else I need to acknowledge, and I'll acknowledge them. But anyway, thank
Well,
you.
this is your last meeting, so you'll get that opportunity.
My last meeting.
All right, so we're on to, Michael, we're under special recognitions. This is a recognition of RTC by the Nevada OSHA or OSHA Safety and Consultation Training Section for the Nevada Safe Partner Award.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the RTC Board. We have Ray Fierro here from OSHA to present an award to the RTC. Ray?
Thank you, Michael. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners and RTC staff. I'm Ray Fierro. I'm the administrator for the Division of Industrial Relations, which is part of the state of Nevada under the Department of Business and Industry. The Division of Industrial Relations has 5 sections. We take care of workers' comp section, mine safety and training, mechanical compliance, which is all the boilers and elevators in the state of Nevada. We have Nevada OSHA, and then what I like to call is the friendly OSHA, which is the safety consultation and training section, as we refer to as SCATS. Before I go into a little bit more detail about what services SCATS offers, I'd like to introduce 2 gentlemen in the audience. Andy Giddings, who's right here. He is the supervisor of the Northern Office of SCATS. And then we also have consultant Dave Murray here in the audience. So, like I said, SCATS, friendly OSHA. So what do? We partner with businesses. So we offer consultation services and training for businesses free of charge. So those are your OSHA 10-hour classes, 30-hour classes, safety classes like electrical, fall protection. And what I have the honor and privilege to do today is recognize the RTC for partnering with SCATS, and I have today the Safe Partner Award. And we give out the Safe Partner Award for agencies or businesses that have partnered with SCATS and have utilized our services. And today you guys are getting the first one for the fiscal year 20.
Awesome.
So,
Well, thank you, Ray. It's awesome to see you. It's always a pleasure to see you. So we appreciate the recognition, and this is a fantastic honor to have that relationship with Nevada OSHA and RTC. So thank you.
you're welcome.
Call Rob Reeder up to accept the award.
All right, and I guess we're gonna
Yeah.
go to the well to.
Come on and bring Conan on up, please, everybody. Yes.
It's a photo kind of day. Let it go start.
going to miss these pictures.
You know what I
You will miss
So
them
I've
because
lost
they
hair
are,
and I've gained weight. That's what I saw there.
That's what happens.
I didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I don't.
But I didn't notice that.
When I started here,
He's-
I could still go run like 3 miles in the morning. I don't do that.
Bullshit, you've never run 3 miles in your life.
You don't know what it was like to work with Dave Ayazzi.
Sir, what's your name? What's this fellow's name? Dave. Dave? Did you leave that thing in your pocket and dry it? Is that what happened? That little one? That's the real camera over there.
Actually, the one you took the pictures of our violation.
The
They were
secret
small.
camera.
There were small violations.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Commissioner. All right. All right, we are on to item 1, approval of the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
So moved.
Have a motion? Do I
Second.
Have a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are on to item 2.1. This is public input. Right now, I have one individual, Mr. John Locke, signed in for public input. Mr. Locke, come on down. Floor is yours, sir.
How are you doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I have some concerns. I drive for RTC. And the schedule that is being put out is not customer-friendly at all. You're giving 1 minute to unload and load a bus. That's not enough time. Mr. Delude is running a program that requires a 2-year survey on roads, customers, and growth of the city. They took 6 months off the GPS. You can't do that. I've got a copy of the schedules. And Keolis is running buses from 4th Street Station, deadheading to Centennial Plaza to do an inbound. There's no sense in it. I don't understand it. I've been here for a while. I know how the systems work. I've done my research, and this is all garbage. You can't run a bus system and have happy customers with this. I don't know what you're planning on doing. I hope something good. I hope I'm making a point. But this is garbage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. Appreciate that. And we'll take those under consideration. I have no other further public comment signed in. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We are on to item 2.2. Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, item 2.2 is to accept the monthly summary report for the Technical Citizens Multimodal and Regional Road Impact Fee Advisory Committees. These reports are in order for approval.
All right. Looking for a motion at this time?
So moved.
I have a motion?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, item 3 is a consent items. These are considered routine business items that have followed RTC business process, and they're in order for your approval.
All right, this is our consent agenda. Is there any agenda items that would like to be pulled or have any further discussion on at this time? Seeing none, looking for a motion to accept the consent agenda as posted.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Second. All those in favor and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right. Mr. Director, we are on to 4.1, your director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to first start with a quick overview of our FlexRide microtransit service that we've started up in Sparks as a demonstration. The first week of FlexRide, actually, I think Mr. Maloney needs to maybe go back and study forecasting again. The first week of FlexRide far exceeded our expectations. We planned to start with 2 vehicles and 1 backup, with hopes of hitting 100 rides per day after the 3rd month of operation. and 200 by the end of the 6th month of demonstration. Over the first week of operation, we averaged 93 customers. We hit a high of 159 on Wednesday of the week and have used the backup bus in the peak as a third vehicle. The previous ridership on the ends, now replaced with FlexRide for the Route 25 and 26, without the 2 school trips, which are still being provided by Route 25L, was averaging between 50 and 60 customers a day. We're beating what we provided for with fixed route, and I think that blew me away. So kudos to the staff for putting this together. We're averaging about half the cost, and this is kind of the purpose of microtransit. We're averaging half the cost of the access per passenger cost. So that's a good thing. We're carrying nearly twice the number of customers during the weekday, and we're doing it at about $12 per trip. So it's lower than access, maybe around the ride cost. We're carrying more people. In transit, that's what you want to do, and I think we've done that. We got a little short video that's illuminating, and I'd like to show you that video, because one more editorial comment. I think this is the future. We get stuck on 40-foot buses, fixed route schedules. I kind of have a sneaking suspicion this is a type of service that will play a greater and greater role in our service toolbox or service array, because it is a technologically based service. But anyway, can we see the video?
For me, it's very convenient for me right now. It brings me right to basically my doorstep. So it's fun for me. No more walking. First, it was a lot of walking when I take the 25, but now, straight home. I was worried about stopping the buses, but to see Flex right now, it's all right. It's awesome. The best thing about it for me right now, I don't have to do a lot of walking like I used to do in the mornings and evening. I recommend it to everybody who lives in Sparks. It's better than taking a 25. It's more convenient, so who wouldn't like to see it expand? Maybe I'm in a different spot and I need to call it. So it's good.
Hi, thanks for picking me up. That was awesome.
No problem.
I take FlexRide because I like the drivers. They're all nice and friendly. The convenience of it, that you can just call them up and they'll pick you up right where you're standing and then take you where you want to go. I have an app, and I can just call them up, and like I called 5 minutes before I got to my destination, and I only waited like 5 more minutes. She was there. The timing is good, the people are nice, and it's an actually quiet, smooth ride.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, to continue, at your last meeting, I announced the double-decker bus demonstration. We will receive the bus next week, and we'll conduct training with bus operators for a week on Tuesday, November 26th. We will invite the media to view and ride the bus in advance of the public demonstration, which is planned to begin on December 2nd for approximately 3 weeks. The bus will operate on various routes and will be free to transit riders. We'll have more details to announce as we get closer to the start, but that is getting ready to go. I'll call on Jane again. I want to thank Jane. I want to thank Keolis and everybody for getting that agreement put together so this demonstration can occur. Believe it or not, there's a lot of liability issues involved, and we had to work through those, but they're done, and we're looking forward to the Alexander Dennis folks bringing that. On December 12th, the RTC will host the first community meeting and open house for the Arlington Avenue Bridges project to be held. We will hold this open house at the McKinley Arts and Cultural Center from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. A presentation will be conducted at 5:30 p.m., which will also be live streamed on our Facebook page to share information, answer questions, and listen to ideas about the possible replacement of the 2 Arlington Avenue bridges in downtown Reno. We shared information about the project with the Reno City Council earlier this week, and we will include a broad and extensive community outreach effort, as we always do, and have been acknowledged as a best practice. Information about the project will be available at rtcwasho.com. Also on December December 12th, our second annual, Commissioner Jardin, please stand up and take a bow. We will do our annual Stuff-A-Bus holiday. That is something you've championed for a long time, and that is just a lot of fun. So the Stuff-A-Bus food drive will be held at Sam's Club at 4835 Kitski Lane in South Reno from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. We encourage the public to donate non-perishable food items such as canned foods, peanut butter, cereal, and oatmeal, canned fruits and vegetables, juice boxes, kid-friendly snacks like granola bars, popcorn, animal crackers, and baby products such as formula, infant cereal, and baby food. Donations collected will be given to the Food Bank of Northern Nevada. On October 31st, Commissioner Delgado, stand up and take a bow. We joined Commissioner Delgado, the Reno Police Department, and others at Trainer Middle School for a safety assembly with the students. That was a really significant moment because, you know, as we move forward with our Vision Zero, as we move forward with the safety initiative, I should now say perhaps maybe as you move forward, that was just a brilliant event because you got to get to the kids when they're young. You got to really reinforce that safety message because, you know, what did I do in middle school? I rode a bicycle like a wild man, and I have a bridge in my mouth from the dental work I've had done to prove it. So let's keep that safety message and safety training continuing with those students. You know, in light of the recent crashes involving 2 students and Trainer, Councilman Delgado is continuing to work with the school and the neighborhood, and we're going to support Oscar in this effort. Commissioner Jardin loves this one too. So we had a now Dan, this is the role of your liberal arts majors. We recently had a misspelling of a street sign on the Virginia Street project. And our project team, I know Dan, I could hear Dan's ladder being loaded into the truck as he personally went out there and removed the signs. But I think we're going to try to arrange some sort of festive event, perhaps around the time, it would be my last week, maybe when we're looking at returning two-way traffic. Dan, boy, he's got his nose up in the air. He's paying attention. Perhaps when we return the two-way traffic to Virginia Street between Mount Rose and Plum. But I want to thank the sign company. I want to thank Dan. I want to thank everybody. You know, this is something that I think, you know, it's just human. It happens. This is going to be our premier corridor, a fun corridor for us all, and I think we should continue with that. So, Michael, am I missing anything? I'm done?
Oh, good. Not yet, actually. He's not done yet. He's got money.
I'm punting on the next one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, being that we're on to our next item, which is our federal report, we're going to take it away from Lee this time. And since we have 2 of our favorite illustrious helpers from Washington, D.C. with us today, I'd like to ask Anya Grace and Congressman John Porter to come down and give us our federal report for this month. Anya. Ms. Graves.
Again, my long career, I've known Mr. Porter since he was known as State Senator John Porter from Boulder City, Nevada. Remember 1997 and AB 333 for the monorail?
Mr. Gibson, I'll save them for later.
Welcome, Ms. Graves. Welcome, Mr. Porter.
It's on?
Yeah, you're good.
Good morning. I'm going to sort of run through the logistics of what's going on in Washington these days, and I'll let Mr. Porter fill you in on all the exciting highlights. So first, I'd like to sort of back up to FY19 and remind you all that RTC was one of only a small handful, like less than 10, communities around the whole United States of America that received funding from the FTA Capital Investment Grant Program. So congratulations again on your $40 million for your Virginia Street Bus Rapid Transit project. So not to be forgotten. They just announced, USDOT just announced the build grant allocations for the FY19, and none were allocated to Nevada, unfortunately. And then still outstanding are bus and bus facilities grant announcements, which are expected any day now. Moving on to FY20, the House and Senate have marked up a bill, but we're unable to come to a conclusion on that before the year expired on October 1st. And so they passed a continuing resolution that will run out on November 21st. Right now, they're working on another continuing resolution that will keep the government funded through December 20th. And I'll leave John to discuss it in more detail, but if that does not work, there is a chance that they pass another continuing resolution or a full-year continuing resolution. And I think what that means for the RTC is generally fine news. While it doesn't help for planning purposes, and even while you're allowed to draw down on highway dollars, transit dollars will be held up until a longer bill or continuing resolution passes. The numbers, the budget numbers are good for transit and highways generally, both in FY19 and 20. So I think that you can anticipate the same or more funding as FY19 for the future. The border wall and impeachment are causing issues in Washington with the appropriations process and many other things. So it's hard to predict what will happen there. Then moving on to FAST Act reauthorization. That bill expires next year, October 1st. And on the Senate side, it's a little complicated, but a number of committees manage that bill. So the Finance Committee would provide the funding. The Commerce Committee has jurisdiction over rail and interstate commerce. The Banking Committee handles the transit title. And the Environment and Public Works Committee handles the highway title. So of those committees, only the Environment and Public Works Committee has marked up a bill. On the House side, the Transportation Infrastructure Committee handles most of the bill, and they have been drafting for the last 60 days that legislation with the hopes of announcing it later this year. I doubt that will happen, so I think we can look forward to something next year. Recently, we've heard from the Heritage Foundation. They've proposed a bill which is likely to be incorporated into the FY21 administration budget request, which may propose to reduce funding for transit. And then also we heard from presidential candidate Biden about an infrastructure initiative that he has planned. As the FAST Act comes to a close over the next 12 months, there is a rescission included in the bill that would require, I don't have the number for Nevada, but over $7 billion in funding across the nation for highway projects mostly to not go out or be returned. And so I don't know if you've figured out, or if Sandra's figured out a Nevada calculation on that, but many people in Congress are working, including your delegation, to have a continuing resolution or any other piece of legislation include something that would stop that rescission. And so I will see how that pans out, but I'm hopeful. Several dozen organizations, including AASHTO and APTA, have signed on to a letter to congressional leadership also opposing that rescission. So I am hopeful that that will be taken care of, but it could pose a gigantic issue for both the state and the RTC.
Okay.
And then I too wanted to say a few words about Lee, which is that it's been an honor, an exciting privilege, a challenge, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, working with you. But as you said, always rewarding, always rewarding. So thanks for being my mentor and a fantastic person to work with. Thanks. And do not forget that I work with folks, transit authorities and transportation organizations around the country. Lee and his team have delivered almost $1 billion in projects in the last 10 years, and that is something you all should be and your community will benefit for decades. So be very proud, very proudly.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, and to members of the board, I'm going to tell you the truth about Lee. We've heard all these great things. Now is an opportunity, right?
Perfect. This is what I've been waiting for.
I'll take a moment just to pick on Lee for like 2 minutes. We've been friends probably 30 some years, give or take. I probably have more information on you than anybody in the room.
You know where the Southern Nevada skeletons are buried.
Yes, I do. And some up here in the north.
up here
But it's been an honor for me as well. Thank you for being there for me personally, professionally. You allowed us to be a part of your team many years ago. I do believe you are our first or second client. I would say you were there from the beginning as we built our business. From Dan and myself, Dan's here, of course, and Ashley, to a team of about 13 people, close to 40-some clients, and thank you for having your faith and trust in us. But I think this is not a retirement, it's a graduation, because the impact that you've had on the community of Northern Nevada, Southern Nevada, the state of Nevada, but also globally is very impressive. And Anya said it well, it's been a fantastic journey. But I'd like to leave for the audience the perspective of your global approach to doing business and serving the community. You know, there are CEOs of corporations and CEOs of governments that don't understand politics. And there are CEOs of businesses that only understand politics and don't understand the operations of an organization. What Lee has brought to the table is a depth of knowledge and a unique instinct to not only understand the community and the people, because they were always first and have been in your whole career, but also how that works as a leader of an organization, but an uncanny ability to understand the political process, which is unheard of. And I would say in Washington, where things are pretty crazy right now, when Lee has come to DC and will continue to come, hopefully, everyone knows Lee Gibson, and they have great respect for your leadership. And that too is unusual, that a lot of folks in Nevada think they don't need to go to DC because it's being handled, but you understood the importance, so thank you for that. I have a lot of other great things to say. I'm hoping we'll have another opportunity, but it's truly been an honor, and thank you on behalf of our team and the Porter families. Thank you. I'll save the embarrassing things for later, so that's okay. So let's get down to business. Impeachment. I have, in my few years of being in public service, haven't seen quite like what's happening today in Washington. With this really lack of respect for the process, lack of respect for the institution, there are some shining stars, individuals that are trying to make things better, contrary to popular belief in Washington. The rank and file members of Congress and the Senate, believe me, they are hardworking and care about the country and care about the community. And in spite of the impeachment and if everything's in gridlock, now is a great opportunity to spend time with elected officials. We see the opportunity. Rank and file members right now are not involved really in a lot of this process that you see. Now, contrary to the dueling media outlets, now is a good time, whether you're city or county or RTC or business, to spend time with elected officials, because they are struggling with what's happening in the environment, but they're looking for some ray of sunshine. So I encourage you to continue what you're doing, which I know you will, at the RTC. Stay involved, and it will truly make a difference as it has in the past. A little bit about legislation. Of course, Anya covered most of the specifics. I think what's important to note is that as many of us in this room have lived through different delegations serving Nevada, we're in a really good place right now. Our senators working very closely together, very reactive and very supportive of the RTC and what's happening here in northwestern Nevada. They have really brought together a solid staff. Senator Rosen, as well as a new member of the Senate, brought a good share of her team over from the House of Representatives. So that is also very positive for the RTC. House of Representatives, as we know, Congresswoman Titus, also one of your biggest fans, Lee. Congresswoman Titus in leadership now and chairman of a subcommittee. Of course, Susie Lee and Stephen Horsford, and then, of course, Mr. Amade serving well and is doing a great job. So I'm going to avoid getting into a lot of the good and the bad and the ugly, and just let you know, now is the opportunity for the RTC moving forward. Spend some time with our delegation so they know you and continue to know all the great things you're doing. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Appreciate it. And Ms. Graves, is there any questions for either of the members? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. All right, we are on to item 4.3. This is our monthly NDOT report. Ms. Swallow.
Good morning. It's not part of my report, it wasn't part of my report, but because it was brought up and there was a question about it, I thought I'd just start out and answer the question. So should the rescission not be repealed, we are looking at a $105 million impact to NDOT. That's roughly 1/3 of our federal funding on an annual basis. So it will be substantial. We're still looking at what that means in terms of projects. Ultimately, there isn't a project on our list that isn't needed, so it just means the projects get delivered more, not as quickly, they get delayed. So we are working with our congressional delegation and making sure that they're aware, and with our partners. It was mentioned that there has been a joint letter written, and the number of signatories on the letter is substantial. But if you're reaching out, if you have occasion to reach out to your our federal legislation and delegation, I would encourage you to request that they repeal that rescission, because it is substantial and it will impact us. All right, so now let's get into the actual report. As I have done in the past, I am going to start with the safety numbers for the past month. As you can see, we lost 215 people. We are still tracking better than past years. That's 74 less than at the end of October last year, so it is tracking better, but it is still 215 too many. Pedestrian fatalities across the state are still down, although we do know that up here in Washoe County, they are not. And so it is something that we continue to track and work to addressing. And unrestrained occupant fatalities are down. As I talk about the safety impact of our roads, I'm just reminded that, we all have a role to play, every single one of us in this room, whether we're designing the roads, we can engineer them differently, whether we're using the roads, whether we're enforcing, we all have a role, and we can all remember our particular role in that. And one of the aspects of that is it's dark now. It's getting darker, and so just a reminder that whether you're going out for a run in the morning or whether you're getting in your car to go to work in the early hours, be safe out there. And if you can, wear bright clothing, wear a headlamp, wear reflective if you're going out for a run or walking your dogs. But also be aware that not everybody's going to be doing that. So if you're driving, be careful. It's dark, and there's safety issues out there. And then I've also been talking about the Joint Forces campaign. So I wanted to let you know that starting on Monday, our law enforcement partners will be doing a click it or ticket through the Thanksgiving holiday, all the way through that following Monday, starting this Monday, a click it or ticket. And we are kicking off the holiday party season. So be aware and don't drive impaired. All right, Spaghetti Bowl Express. As requested, and we're going to be doing these, we've requested a monthly report. We'll be doing these intermittently depending on the nature of the report. If there's something substantial, we'll likely have it as an agenda item, but if it's process as normal, project is proceeding as normal, we'll just do it as part of my director's report. So this one is the first version of that, and I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that everything is continuing on schedule. In fact, we received approval of our U.S. Army Corps 408 permit last month, so we do have approval to work in and around the Truckee River, which is important for this project. As you know, we received an unsolicited proposal in September to deliver the project via design build. That is our primary agenda item on the Transportation Board meeting this coming Monday. They will be considering 3 options: to accept the proposal and proceed with a sole source procurement, to competitively bid the proposal, so go back out and do a design build procurement, or to reject the proposal and continue as we have been with the design bid build. So those are their 3 options. They'll be considering them on Monday morning. And we have looked at everything on the proposal, looking at the safety, societal, environmental impacts, also constructability, cost, and schedule. So we've done a full analysis of it, and I look forward to the board's decision on Monday, and we'll have a new update for you then in December based on what their decision is. Avalanche control system on Mount Rose. I brought this up last month because it was heavy in the media. I just wanted to give you an update. We have, in October, since our last meeting, we've had all of the inspections needed. Everything came back clear. There are a few minor inspections or minor issues that they wanted us to address, which are mostly carpentry, addressing some ventilation and airflow through the storage building, but we are planning on operating as we have been, recognizing that it is an aging system, and so we are also looking at what we need to do to replace the system moving forward. But all of the inspections were clear on the building, and we are planning on continuing to operate as we have been. I-80 repaving, I've mentioned this a few times, west of Reno from Keystone to the state line. That section had not been fully repaved since 2003, and we placed over, we've substantially completed it. So we've replaced over 200,000 tons of new asphalt, repaved more than 12 miles of interstate, so it's now a smoother and safer ride. We also added burial rail improvements and started work on the activation of a wrong-way driver detection system. This is actually something that's a challenge nationally, and we've recognized it and are actually out ahead of the game with some provisional approvals to do systems that are a little bit further advanced, and so we're excited about doing that. We actually had a significant wrong-way driver collision yesterday in Vegas that shut down I-15 through the Spaghetti Bowl for the morning commute, all the way from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. So this is something we know we need to do. I try not to mention Vegas when I'm up here, but it's just an example of the fact that wrong-way driver incidents do happen, and there are ways that we can address them, and so we're already working on doing that. We also, on this project, updated the rumble strips. And you probably heard about our updating of the rumble strips out on I-80. A few of you probably heard about it. We actually updated them to a new standard. And the new standard, previously the rumble strips were located a little bit outside of the fog line, but the new engineering standard is they're actually on that fog line. And so what happened is when we updated them, residents along that corridor, the trucks were running on the line, residents on the corridor commented. We heard from a lot, and we went back out and we've adjusted it, and we've also heard now that they were thankful and that it has helped. So I was talking with Mayor Smith earlier. That is something that I think we do really well, is when we hear that there's a challenge, we do try to get out there. Sometimes the challenges are easier to fix than others, but we do try to address the concerns of the citizens. And the last thing is, at the last board meeting, there were a whole bunch of questions, and I'm going to try, because I'm not always going to get back to you between the board meetings, so if I don't get back to you between the board meetings, and even if I do, I may still do it at the next meeting so that you all hear it, because all of you hear the questions, but you may not all hear the answers. So I'm going to try and just come back, report back on the updates. So the advanced warning system, advanced signal warning system, Commissioner Hartung has asked a lot about this, whether it's static, if it's activated, or if it's dynamic. And so I committed that we would come back, and we're looking at coming back in January for a presentation on that system, so you understand what we're looking at and how it may impact the roadways and the networks that you drive on. The no engine brake, BREAK, those engines don't get a break ever. We found the sign, we fixed it. So the do not block intersection signage and striping at Edmonton and Pyramid. We are actually looking at, we're hoping to get the signs printed and get that installed by the end of the year, so that we will have a do not block at that intersection. I'm just going to say, I've been told it'll be about 6 weeks, but 6 weeks from now is like Christmas. So it might eke out into the early January, but we're hoping to get that done here in the next 6 weeks to a couple of months, depending on the sign timing. Corridor, I-80, I already told you about those. Corridor studies, there were two. The first one was McCarran, and then on behalf of Commissioner Lucy, also Mount Rose. So on that, I wish I actually had like a very concise answer on this, but the answer is, we recognize that sometimes when we do these studies, we come up with improvements that might be spot improvements and may have a detrimental impact to the overall corridor and the overall vision for the corridor as a community. So last week we had a meeting with the RTC, and we discussed both corridors, McCarran and Mount Rose, and I imagine there were probably some other corridors that we talked about, but those being the focus. And we committed to giving the RTC funding to do a full corridor study of McCarran, the entire corridor. with primary focus on the northern quadrants to really make sure that what we're doing on that corridor reflects what we want as a community in terms of mobility, accessibility. And so the RTC, we're committing to that, to give funding to help. The RTC will be leading that study and really looking at the safety needs of the corridor overall. On the other hand, on Mount Rose, we are going to be leading that study. So we're partnering, and we are looking at the full corridor extents of the Mount Rose study, looking at possibly including east of 580 to the roundabout. So we're looking at what the extents of the Mount Rose corridor will look like. In the meantime, we are looking at if there's opportunities to do interim improvements that may not align with the future vision, but that are interim and that may not have a significant impact if we need to take them out. So low-cost improvements, what we might do. One of those that's already under consideration for Mount Rose is putting in a raised median. And we'll be having those conversations about what that looks like and what that means, because doing that will immediately have an impact, hopefully on speeds, but also on cross-traffic and turning and help build driver expectation of where driving turns can be. But it will perhaps require some people to go a little out of their way to make a U-turn to get back to where they were going. So looking at, those trade-offs, safety versus freedom.
Right.
And so we're looking at that, and we'll be working closely with the county and the cities as appropriate on both of those studies and the RTC to make sure that we deliver projects that are appropriate for the ultimate vision of the corridor. Pardandini Bridge, the question regarding that was the impacts to the driving public as we do that. Everybody, I think you understand that the bridge needs to be replaced. And so we cannot dictate the means and methods by which they do the replacement, but we can give them guidelines in terms of what they're allowed to do and not allowed. And so along those lines, we're planning on doing the removal of the bridge will be a marathon weekend to really just get the bridge out of the way. And that weekend will allow access using the ramps. So the ramps will be used so that the impact to the 395 will be minimal. Everybody can use the ramps during that weekend removal. Once the bridge is removed and we start working on the construction of the new bridge, the parameters that we're looking at will be to have nighttime lane closures only. So daytime, all the general purpose lanes on 395 would remain open, but nighttime there would be lane closures to allow for the construction of it. Emergency personnel have asked that we make sure that we keep the southbound on-ramp open for emergency access, and then provide a emergency turnaround south of the bridge so they can go northbound. And we are, of course, working with all of our neighboring properties and the law enforcement community, as well as the college campus, to make sure that we're minimizing their impact as much as possible and everybody is aware of the detours moving forward. Really trying to make sure that we it's a balance when you start looking at, well, do we just do it do we do it one season and get it over with, or do we delay it and do it in 2 seasons and have significant impacts either way to everybody? So looking at trying to deliver the project as fast as possible and minimize the impact on that. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say something to Lee as well. And Lee, I'm just going to keep it really quick. We've known each other because of my husband for some time, and I too have some stories, but we'll keep those. I appreciate you welcomed me up here. We had dinner, I think, the night that I was appointed. So you welcomed me up here, and it's been great, and including me in the board, giving me a heads up when I need to have a heads up. I appreciate that you call Sandra first. Thank you. Although now I understand that there's intellectual sparring going on with you and her and me, and I don't know how she has brain left after that, because I do the same thing. She comes in, I'm like, ooh, I read this and I thought about this, and she has to, so she's taken it from both of us. So, so stop that. But I appreciate that, and I have enjoyed working with you, and we'll miss you in this role, but I'm sure we'll continue to engage moving forward, and appreciate what you have created in terms of the relationship between NDOT and the RTC, and do look forward to working with your successor, whoever that is, to continue on the great groundwork that you've laid and not let that falter. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Swallow. Any questions for Christina? Madam Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the reports are always good. I appreciate the updates that we always get. My question is, and I know this is certainly something of importance to our entire region and council Commissioner Delgado, council member, friend. The question with regards to the school zone, potentially a school zone on Plum in front of Wooster High School, understanding that the incident, the tragic death of the student there was not on Plum, but I got pinged by a number of people, including the principal of the school, asking why there wasn't a school zone on Plum in front of Wooster. And that took some unpacking to kind of figure out, well, it's because it's over 150 feet from the front of the school, which actually isn't. Well, I said, well, there's a school zone in front of Reed, so why isn't there a school zone in front of Wooster? So that didn't quite. End of the day, we found out it's your road. It's NDOT's, not City of Reno's or RTC's. So I know you guys were looking into that. Do we have any feedback, or can we get feedback at the next meeting on?
We can certainly do something at the December meeting. It was actually a slide that I had for this meeting, but we're not ready. And so I didn't want to say, we're working on it and then not have the answer. I should have just predicted that you would ask. But we are working on it. Whenever we do a school zone, it's not just a matter of whose road it is. It's also a matter of what the businesses are around it, what the context of this road is, what the school zone actually is. Where are they commuting to get to the school? Are they crossing that road? And so there's a lot of other implications that we need to look at. So it's a broader study. We're doing it, and I should have an update in December.
Okay, very good. And I just did want to say I appreciate that the board will be looking at the unsolicited bid on Monday. Appreciate everybody making that a priority and trying to expedite that project in whatever form and fashion possible. So just my thanks for it hitting an agenda.
Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Swallow, first of all, I want to thank you for getting out and working on the sign on Pyramid. Your engineer, your district engineer, Mike Fease, of whom I've known for many, many years, he was on it, and we tried to figure it all out. And so I'm pleased that got taken care of. Denise, can you go to the very first slide?
The safety slide?
The spaghetti bowl slide? Can you do it? Okay, I'll ask questions while you're getting there. So with respect to the advanced warning system, thank you for looking into that. And I've had some conversations with a number of citizens. They don't care how you do it, just make them all consistent. That's our only ask. Just make them all the same so that everybody knows, because it's very, very confusing. And my fear is that especially young drivers will make a mistake, and because they're just confused by it. So that's really the issue. In that same stretch of road off of Calle de la Plata, I probably get at least half a dozen mentions a month. That's a very, very, very dangerous stretch of road. It's from, for all intents and purposes, from Egyptian/Sunset Springs to the end of the valley, which is just past Alamosa. It's a 2-lane road. It's 55 when you from Sunset Springs or Egyptian to Calle de la Plata, but beyond that it's 65, and it's treacherous getting across that roadway. It's really difficult, and my fear is that in order to get the attention, something bad is going to have to happen, and I don't want that to be the case. I really want NDOT to start looking at that very carefully, because we've been blessed thus far. We haven't had any major fatalities out, where a whole van or something like that. Out farther, it's usually somebody going off the road, but there's a lot of cross traffic in that area, and I'm afraid. I'm afraid for my citizens. So I'd appreciate looking into that. I want to thank you guys for using my photograph. That's mine. I kid you not. That's my image. Thank you, NDOT. Thank you, Sandra, for, I don't know whether it was you. I remember giving it to him, but
I'll make sure to put an attribution on the bottom in the future.
Actually, online it is. There is an attribution, but here's the reason why I brought this up. I'm really looking forward to what I'm hoping that you guys will do is do an overlay, because I get questions now from people, what's it going to look like? What's that interchange? What's the braiding going to look like? And we can even go back out. It's not difficult to go out and make an oblique so that we can do that. But it would be really nice for people to kind of know, because I think we all get questions on Spaghetti Bowl, even though it's not in my district. I know Commissioner Lucy gets questions. I know Commissioner Jardin or Councilwoman Jardin. I know Mayor Smith. I know Councilman Delgado and all the other elected officials. So it just an idea of what that braiding might look like, because I think we've kind of come up with a plan thus far as to what the final design is going to look like. Have we not?
We can certainly get you something on the Spaghetti Bowl Express on this particular project, because
Yeah.
we do have a good idea of what that's going to look
Yeah.
like. In terms of the overall Spaghetti Bowl, I'd hesitate to do that because of the tenure of the duration of that project, and things
Sure.
could change, but we can get you something on that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
because we just get questions of what are the setbacks going to look like, how much is there, what kind of changes, what kind of property has to be taken, et cetera. And so those are some of the questions that I've been getting. You talked about 395 North, and you said nighttime. Define nighttime, because now it gets dark at 4 o'clock.
Outside of the evening commute,
Okay.
yeah, and before the morning commute.
Okay,
So, yeah.
okay, yeah, that's wonderful. Back to Spanish Springs, we've been working diligently with NDOT, and I'm hoping that we can get some resolve on this. That we have a real problem on the west side of Pyramid with storm drainage in NDOT's right-of-way. Comes down off of Dolores, and I know at the county, we've tried to figure this out, and it actually comes down through that whole entire subdivision. And then there's some tribal land right there on the corner. It's sort of on the corner of Eagle Canyon. I know you're not intimately familiar with that neighborhood, but I get calls from the Reno Sparks Indian Colony representatives on that issue, and so I'm hoping that we can come up while it's dry. It's a wonderful time to do, stormwater features.
I believe we're working with the county on that. I think there's some issues with downstream
I
facilities.
know we're working with Sparks on it
Yes,
also, so I know that we're all in concert, but I want to keep this on the forefront. And then, and thank you so much on that. Thank you for the do not block intersection at Emerson for bringing that up. I love your format. That's in my parlance, that's swell. I think that's wonderful. And so then the last thing, and Councilwoman Jardin brought this up about school zones. Fast approaching is the new high school on McCarran, which is, everybody's referring to Wild Creek, but it's been redubbed Proctor Hug. And my concern is how are we going to deal with the traffic through there in terms of, school zones and what's NDOT going to allow, and how are we going to approach that from NDOT's perspective also, not just the local jurisdictional view. So that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything?
I'm good.
Councilman? All right. I have just a couple quick things, Ms. Swallow. One, thank you about the study about Mount Rose. Very excited about seeing what the outcomes of that will be. One, I want to point out, too, one of the things we've been working on in the county, especially in the Holcomb Ranch area and some parts of the southern part of my district, a lot of the roads, some of those rural regional roads, are still NDOT roads. Huffaker to Huffaker Lane, Damani Lane is a NDOT road. Holcomb Ranch Road all the way around is an NDOT road. And so a lot of those improvements that happen, I know your staff has been out there and you've had crews out there doing resurfacing and pavement preservation. Just want to have some of those conversations with you. We've had some challenges with the contractor out there and how that pavement preservation was done. They kind of went in and did just a quick overlay, left a lot of gravel. There was a lot of cleanup, and so I just wanted to have some conversations with maybe you or Cole when we get an opportunity to kind of talk about maybe some operational stuff about that, but if we can have those conversations. And I know you and I have talked about maybe doing some of those changes and transfer, so those transfers back to the county. So other than that, thank you again. We really appreciate it, and thank you for your report this month. Thanks. One of the things I'd like to point out before we move on here is that we do have one of our somebody with us today, a very important individual who's a friend of RTC, but Eileen Franson's here with our CEO of Keolis is here, so I want to thank you for coming to our meeting today and participating and being part of the conversation. And we appreciate all the work you do at Keolis, and we enjoy the partnership for our transit community. So thank you. Thank you for being with us. All right, Mr. Director, we are on to item 5.1. This is our engineering and acknowledgement.
Mr. Chairman, item 5.1 is to acknowledge receipt of the Virginia Street Bus Rapid Transit Extension Monthly Progress Report. Mr. Wilbrecht will provide us that report.
Welcome, Jeff.
Yeah, good morning. Jeff Wilbrecht, RTC Project Manager, excuse me, for the Virginia Street Project. I'd like to give just a quick update of kind of where we're at and where we're going with the project. Maybe just next slide.
Mayor and Vice Mayor.
Got a guy with an MBA in MS in civil engineering, and he can't make a power plant yet.
I know. We all have our challenges.
Laser pointer works.
That's Jeff.
It's a short presentation. All right. I don't even know which one now.
You know, we try to get super technical here, but
Hey, there we go.
Here we go. Hey.
So great. So we're back on schedule. So again, so the project's been going really, really well. A lot of the work's been occurring between Plum Lane and Mount Rose. Actually, at the end of this week, probably Saturday morning, if you go through Midtown, there'll be two-way traffic between Plum Lane and Mount Rose Street in Holcomb. So this was a major milestone that we kind of set for the contractor to open that section of the project back up, because Plum Lane, Virginia intersection is kind of a really critical, important, there's a lot of traffic that goes through the intersection. So to complete that scope of work early on in the project was a big priority for us. It's going to then facilitate future detours as we continue northward. Through this winter, we are going to continue north. We've more or less completed the west side of the road between Mount Rose and Center Street. Now we're going to be working on the sidewalks on the east side of the road between Holcomb and Center Street. So Lulu's, Strummel Gallery, up north Z-Bar, and that kind of area. That's going to tie into the roundabout work that we're currently working on. There was some underground utility stuff and some TUMWA improvements that were kind of late added to the contract that you guys just recently approved the change order for their work. So that work is going to be getting underway for us to then start the roundabout work, at the concrete and stuff like that in the mid-January timeframe is when we're going to start that work. So all that stuff is actually, we're ahead of schedule. It's still, I wouldn't say the project's ahead of schedule, but a lot of that surface work early on in the project is ahead of schedule. Next spring, when we get ready to start paving, that's when we'll really kind of be able to understand where we're at with the schedule. Those temperatures of paving are really critical for us completing the work in a timely fashion. So we're also starting to work on the transit stations. There's one right near Regency Way that's underway. And so you'll start to see that kind of starting to go vertical. And then also we're starting to work on the North Virginia part of the project. So we're getting ready. We actually just yesterday released the abatement contract for those 5 properties to perform asbestos and lead abatement to make sure that they're clean, so that when we go to demo them, they're not a hazardous issue. And that will be done in advance of construction starting up there, springtime. So April, May timeframe, we'll get work going on at those 5, that 8th to 9th Street section, and then also the area of the roundabout. So these are all progressing really, really well. The contractor's been working really hard. The project team's been working hard. So I just wanted to give them some kudos. To kind of talk a little bit more about the construction update. So we've done almost $14 million worth of work in Midtown. It's been a significant amount of work in the last couple months down there. Today, you did just approve a couple change orders. There have been some other change orders that have been kind of introduced to the project. They're all owner-driven change orders, as this is a CMAR contract. but they're really to make the project better. And so some of them are just late additions to better tie in our project to some of the side streets. So if the pavement's torn up right there, it doesn't make sense to stop prior to it. We want to appropriately tie the project into the corridor. There's some City of Reno requested landscape and irrigation changes. We did request some glass panels to the back of the Midtown stations, so that's a pending change order. And then up in the North Virginia section of the project, we're going to make that entire area ADA compliant. So initially, we weren't planning to touch a couple of the driveways where the improvements are not specifically at, in the 14th to 15th Street section, but we are going to be introducing those changes to the project to, they're all a betterment to the project. None of it's negative, none of it's contractor driven, so it's all in that regard. And I always like to get a lot of photos, so I have a couple of photos to share. One of them's of completed St. Lawrence Avenue, concrete going in. If you've been down there lately, you're starting to see how immensely large the sidewalks are. They're going to be so pedestrian friendly. There's street trees that are going to be going in. It's really starting to transform the project as we continue to move northward from Mount Rose Street. You'll start to really see the transformation. Oops. So here's another kind of before and after photo from Plum Lane looking north, of what it looked like before and then what it's now looking like. Again, at the end of the week, we're going to open Plum Lane in this stretch, to two-way traffic completely. So it's really starting to take place. We'll do more of these photos as we kind of incrementally move north to really see the before and after, because it's going to be an immense transformation. And again, we're always doing lots of outreach. The two items that I'd kind of really like to highlight in this item are the Halloween-go event. So actually Midtown Group, kind of came together and did their own thing, which was really awesome. It was a Halloween bingo themed event where they had all the different businesses participate, and they got stamps, and then at the end of the week they did a drawing, and actually had a lot of interest in the community of getting people to come down to the community. So that was a great event that they participated in and are put on. And then they have a a holiday party coming up actually at the end of this week to outreach and do more. They have a new logo, and they're going to be kind of introducing some new stuff. So Midtown's really busy. It's happening. And they're doing a lot to help promote themselves. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions from the board? Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. And just quickly, kudos to everybody on this. I know it's been a difficult project in considering the scope and the different ideas that first came about with regards to it. And there was some conflict of what different people wanted to see. But now that it's rolled out, truly, it has gone about as smooth as one could expect. And that's an attribute to Dan and SNC and the work that they're doing. And, from a city's perspective, we couldn't be happier. And the business owners, as the sidewalks are opening up, they are thrilled. Those sidewalks are incredible. And, we had at our city council meeting, we had a gentleman in a wheelchair, and he came, and he doesn't come down to City Hall very often. And Smyers, I think is his last name. And he came and spoke very appreciative of the Keystone, California improvements, but particularly of Virginia Street, because he said in his wheelchair, the stamped concrete in the heart of downtown is very jarring on his wheelchair. And he said it's so much smoother going through Midtown now, and the transition from the street onto the sidewalk was a much better experience for him, and he was very, very appreciative. So I thought that was important for those with mobility issues, and they value it. John Flansburgh is here, and maybe this is where we start. Those sidewalks are so beautifully wide, and now that we've opened up sections, certainly by the spring, a lot of those restaurants are going to want to have al fresco dining. I want to make sure we at the city don't have some procedure or process that inhibits them from doing that, because we have got a lot of really goodwill in our community right now with regards to this project. I sure would hate to have these beautiful wide sidewalks in place, and I'm talking about the city here, that we would be preventing or putting barriers in the way of them being able to have that al fresco dining and do the things they want to do on these beautifully wide sidewalks. So I don't want that to splash on this organization because of some red tape or something that makes it horrible. So kudos. And with regards to the sign, I will say this, when somebody makes a mistake, we hear about it. And normally it's pretty, it can be pretty gnarly and people can be kind of mean. The sign was a human mistake, and the community responded in a, hey, everybody makes those mistakes, happened to be a pretty funny one. And, you know, the sign maker, it doesn't matter who ultimately, it was a human that made the sign. We should be thankful that a human made the sign and not, you know, they had a job, and we all make those mistakes. So I think we can turn lemonade from lemons and you know, give them to the Midtown merchants and let them auction it off. Do something creative to draw attention to the area during this construction. I think there's a way to really make something good, because those are a hot commodity right now. And I think there's a lot of longtime businesses that would love to have one of those. Not in a joking butt of a joke sort of a way, but in a, we were transforming a street and something funny happened, and here's a, I remember when sort of thing. Happens to everybody. So we'd like to get those signs and let the Midtown merchants do something creative with it. So, thank you.
Anybody else? You know, I have to say, Jeff, you know, I have to give you and Dan a lot of credit for all the work and time that you guys have put in down there. It has been tremendous. I know the challenges that have you both have experienced through this whole process, and I continue to go down there periodically, either for lunch or for dinner, or just to go visit the merchants and see how things are going. And it's been great. It really has been great. And, you know, there are growing pains with every project. And, you know, I sat there and experienced it with the 4th Street Prater project. But I gotta tell you that just from the basic beginnings of the reveals that we've seen with the sidewalks and the improvements from Plum to Mount Rose, and those are already tremendous. And I am just so excited to see what the final project is going to look like. And it's really going to be, as I've continued to say at many RSCVA meetings and many county commission meetings, that Virginia Street is that's the doorstep to our community. Many people get off I-80, go through our downtown area and into Midtown now. And when we have a really beautiful corridor like that, it's going to be so inviting for so many tourists and the residents alike that'll really be proud of something. So I agree with the Vice Chair that this is, you know, there are human errors and human challenges that we go through, and it's just part of our daily life. You know, if there isn't any kind of frustration, you don't know that you're living. And so I think that but I think the final product is going to be something that we're all going to be very, very proud of. So I want to thank you and Dan for your time and commitment. And I know every time there is an issue, there is just an absolute 100% immediate response from the both of you. I know the team has turned out to businesses, even small things. Just you guys have been Johnny on the spot every time there's been an issue. So I want to thank you for your continued dedication and commitment to the project. So thank you. All right. Seeing nothing further, we will move on. Do you want to do? Okay, yeah. Well, maybe. Yeah, can I get a motion to accept the report? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Hold on one second. How about we take it out of, we'll take it out of order.
Can we take 7.1 and 7.2 together?
You just do a motion to combine it.
You could do 7.1, 7.2 together as a motion, because there's overlap back and forth.
Okay, well, hold on. I'll do it out of order. All right, so I'm going to take on 5.2. We're going to, Mr. Director, we're going to do 5.2, please.
Mr. Chairman, item 5.2 is to acknowledge receipt of the Lemon Drive Monthly Progress Report. Mr. Keller?
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. Dale Keller, RTC Project Manager. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief update on the Lemon Drive project. This week, the project team has just kicked off this project with exploratory work, looking at the roadway conditions along Lemon Drive by providing different borings and samples. So we are just underway, and we're looking to improve the overall safety mobility of Lemon Drive. So as an overview, the RTP identifies Lemon Drive as a capacity project in the first near-term next 5 years in the 2040 RTP. What this presents is identified in the capital improvement plans as well as the TIP. Back in September, this board approved Jacobs Engineering to provide professional engineering services to start looking at Lemon Drive in the design. So this project is divided into two very distinct segments, and we'll touch upon that here in a second. And also, the RTC is closely coordinating with Washoe County as well as City of Reno to look at the overall mitigation strategies of Swan Lake. So segment one. Segment one is from US 395 all the way up to Military Road. This is roughly a mile segment. We're looking to improve the roadway capacity from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. And right now, the operations at Sky Vista Boulevard and Buck and Lemon Drive is not, if not the busiest, one of the busiest intersections in the city of Reno. So we're looking to improve safety, mobility, and access conditions around this intersection. Also, part of the scope is improve the mobility of multimodal traffic with the shared use connectivity, as well as sidewalks throughout. The scope we're looking here is through final design with Jacobs Engineering, and we'll touch upon the schedule in a second. Next is segment 2. This is where it becomes a little spicy, as Mr. Gibson likes to say. Segment 2 is from Fleetwood Drive around Chickadee Drive. This map doesn't really depict where the location is as good as I like, but Swan Lake is right through the center of this. We're looking to improve, first, overall safety to residents and first responders, and second is with operations mobility for possible future growth. We are looking at the scope of work is really alternative analysis, public involvement, and lastly is a project delivery selection approach. Sometime next summer, I'll come back and ask for or provide recommendations, either move forward with a design build project, a CMAR project, or a traditional design bid build project. So the schedule between both of these segments, both segment 1 and segment 2, we'll be working on the design concurrently. Overall, in the segment 1 milestones, we look to complete final design through 2020 and be ready for a construction project in 2021, depending on funding. And on segment 2, there's many different stakeholders at work here between the Swan Lake recovery and the overall mitigation strategy for Swan Lake. So what we're going to be tasked to do is, starting this winter and early next year, is alternative analysis, determine what do we do with Lemon Drive. Do we elevate it? Do we remove it? Do we elevate a shared use path, and so forth? So we're going to look through those designs. We'll have a lot of community input, and starting next year, we'll have public meetings and public engagement starting probably February 2020. Also, we'll make presentations to City Council as well as Washoe County to provide opportunities for input. And like I said, the last row there on segment 2 is project delivery report. At that time, sometime next summer, we'll present different options how to deliver a construction project around Swan Lake. With agency coordination, like I said, Washoe County is taking the lead with many different opportunities. For example, the FEMA planning study and looking at the different hazardous, 13 different hazardous conditions that are out there or around actually the whole Washoe County. In addition, we're working closely with the City of Reno with some sewer main extension improvements. Also, there's some private developments proposed, and also how to reevaluate the 100-year floodplain. We are part of the solution, and we're excited to be moving forward as this. And you see on the right of the screen is we're going to develop a technical advisory committee. So we have different stakeholders be a part of this overall committee to help determine the best solution for Lemon Drive itself. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Hartshorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Dale, I'm thrilled with this. This is we're moving along nicely. I like the idea of elevating the shared use path. I think that's a wonderful plan. I think that it's a more cost-effective plan, but we still need to widen the road, and the path can act as that barrier, which I'm fully supportive of that. My question, though, is we've planned to go to Chickadee, but this really needs to get to Ramsey. It needs to get to the end of the valley, because if you look at, and many of you have heard this already, but if you look at the airport's developmental options, there's 5,000 acres to develop on the airport at some point. And if we can get it to Ramsey, then essentially the airport property is right there. And while we're out there, while we've got the equipment out there, I mean, my belief is that Ramsey will not only accomplish opening up that far end of the airport for industrial and commercial uses, which will ultimately, I mean, it's going to come. It's not an if, it's when. But it will also help Washoe County and the citizens in that area and the city of Reno to basically cordon off that end of the lake, and then we can deal with the barriers on the north and the south end so that we can basically contain Swan Lake inside those boundaries. And we've done this. You guys have done a great job assessing this. This is not a new concept. If you look at Washoe Valley, it's exactly what we've done in Washoe Valley with Washoe Lake. It's an identical concept, just done by a different agency. So I don't know how we get to the point. I know, Mr. Gibson, you and I have talked about Chickadee to Ramsey and that additional component, that additional piece, but I'm curious as to, are we thinking about that in this process as well?
So from a project level, we'll work closely with Washoe County, understanding what the needs are and overall solution about how to contain that Swan Lake area, and what does that mean going out to Ramsey or not. So we'll look at the capacity side of this, and then, of course, how can we be a partner together between Washoe and city and RTC to find the overall solution that works for all.
One of the things that I get a little frustrated, and I've not been silent on this, I get frustrated with RTC on is that we take a road to a certain place when we could have taken it just a little bit farther and achieved so much more. And I can show you how Pyramid and McCarran would have worked better if we would have just taken that third lane up over the hill at least to Disk. But I don't want to be in the same scenario with this when we only take it to Chickadee and taking it just that little bit further, that finish line further. That would really make the project whole. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments in regards to this? All right, thank you, Dale, appreciate it. Looking for a motion to accept the report. I have a motion. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 5.3. This is the receiver's report on the speed limit on Veterans Parkway. Brian.
Brian is going to provide us a quick overview of this issue.
Good morning, Commission. Good morning, Chairman. Brief. Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering.
Expeditious.
Yes.
I was asked to give a fast presentation on the speed limit for Southeast Connector. This presentation will quickly focus on the areas between South Meadows and Gregg Street and the new area that was just constructed. As you know, Veterans Parkway was designed to the higher standards and is, a facility that we should hold our region to a standard there, in that we're looking out at 20 years and, meeting the capacity needs out that far. So we need to be careful when we look at old projects and point to them that this is how we should do things. We should be looking at our Southeast Connector, and this is how we should be handling transportation in the region. Let's see if I got the right one. All right, how did we get to the 45 mile an hour speed limit? It was all about the design, working with the local jurisdictions through that design process at the 30, 60, and final design plans of setting that design speed limit was 55 miles an hour. What is that? That's the geometric design that the engineering discipline looks to for the interaction between the drivers, the infrastructure, and the vehicles themselves. Some of the things that the team looked at during that time and why it was set 10 miles an hour less than the design speed is the safety factor there. You also have a consistency within the whole Veterans Corridor of being 45. The community's concerns were brought up during there as far as wildlife and traffic, and all those factors into how this new project came out to be the 45 as the posted speed limit. Quickly, where do we go from here? So we just conducted a speed study out there since the previous meeting, of which we did find the 85th percentile to be above 55 miles an hour. So we will be working with the local jurisdictions. As you know, the RTC now doesn't enforce or change these speed limits. It would be up to the local communities. And so NRS empowers the cities to regulate traffic on there. I'll be working mainly with the city of Reno and traffic engineers on getting this report to them so they can make that decision. factoring all the stuff in for how the design was established, where we're at now. We're not 20 years in the future, so we don't have the congestion, we don't have the development there. So is there a possibility of making a change? And using the City of Reno's design manual and the traffic policy and following that seemed like a good way, of which other traffic engineers, being the county, as well as the City of Sparks, support that. Be happy to answer any other questions quickly.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would like to add is that we will be preparing a letter to transmit this information to the traffic engineers at each of the entities that has jurisdiction over the Southeast Connector, and then they will, of course, in accordance with NRS 266.277, make that decision. I guess we could order some signs once that decision is made as part of the project, but this item does not require action today, but the speed study did indicate 55 is 85th percentile, so that conforms with standards, and so that's the basis for which the entities can make the decision.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had sent letters to the RTC chairman, the county commission chairman, Mayor Sheevy, and maybe a few other letters requesting that they all raise their speed limits to 55. Sparks wants to raise the bridge speed limit from 40 to 45. So it'll still be lower than the rest. And then we know we have construction coming down in Reno, so that you can adjust that speed limit back, keep it at 45 down to when you get into the housing projects down there. So I think this is something that we need to do. Because as you said, they're not doing 45.
Over 65.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a little story about Vista, because the biggest thing we have, biggest complaint we get is speeding, and Vista is 45 miles an hour. We call it a sting down by the Catholic Church. In 1 hour, we issued 26 tickets, and the slowest ticket was for 73 miles an hour on Vista. So they're doing it, and if we can raise it, and if they're doing 65, they'll only be doing 10 miles an hour, hope the speed limit, but something we need to get done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Delgado.
Thank you, Chairman. Definitely an issue as a representative of Ward 3 that this runs through, as I hear from constituents all the time. One of the things and thank you for, because it's a constant conversation I have, but one of the things I want to take a little bit pause going into, as we have just approved a large development between Mariloma to South Meadows of about 4,000 units, which, as I know from other constituents from those developments from South Meadows moving to south, they actually want to lower the speed limit from 45 down. And so, like anything else, once we raise the limit, it's going to be hard to lower it. And then that's when we start talking about safety pieces and so forth. So just wanted to go into this with a little bit of a pause, a little bit of break, because the last thing I want to know is start hearing from us constituents and residents saying, lower the speed limit after we've already raised it. And so that's something that we need to really consider, especially with us talking about pedestrian safety and concerns and so forth, is we went a little bit too quickly for the sake of just moving forward, knowing that we just approved a large-scale development between Mariloma and South Meadows is something that I've been really trying to dive back to and making sure my constituents got to take a deep breath about saying, what does that future look like, especially along the Southeast Connector. But again, respectfully, I understand that people are going fast, but as soon as something happens, they're going to come right back and say, lower the speed limit, just like all those constituents right now are saying between South Meadows and down to Carrot, where you have kids that don't even want to cross the street between Cyan over to the new school because they're just scared because of the speed limit is 45 and they want to lower it there. So things that we all need to consider in terms of moving too quickly for the sake of saying that we're passing out a lot of tickets. So just caution, but I'm looking forward to the conversations.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, just quickly, so when you did the 85th percentile study, did you do it at one point, to Councilmember Delgado's comments, did you do it at one point within the Southeast Connector span, or did you do it at different points? Because I kind of agree with him that I think there's an opportunity in the center of it where it performs more like a freeway to raise it up to, 55 or above. But if the areas where it comes down, did you do different areas?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we did. We did 3 specific cross sections along the whole length of this new section. So there's one around Clean Water Way, one between Pembroke and Mariloma, and then one south, just north of South Meadows Parkway.
So the 85th percentile was over 55 in all of them?
That is correct.
So when you say over 55, how much over 55?
On average, about 58, 59.
Okay.
Northbound was a little bit faster
It's
than
a little
southbound.
lower than I actually thought it was going to be. Okay, I agree with Councilmember Delgado, though. I think there's an opportunity to maybe bookend it with a lower speed, but give the center of it, with good signage, I think maybe we can get where we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. You know, Mr. Stewart, I agree with my two fellow colleagues up here that, you know, we just coming off the heels of the South Valley's multimodal study, we've identified obviously some areas on Veterans Parkway, all the way from the roundabout to where South Meadows comes into the Southeast Connector, that there are some intersections and some points of time along that 45 right now is maybe even too fast in some of those residential areas. But as it performs through certain parts of it, and realize that connector starts at one in the middle of my district and goes to the very edge of my district from one end to the other. I have all stretches of that road. And when you see it perform through the old Rosewood Golf Course area, that's fine. As it proceeds to the UNR Farms area, that's fine. But as it tapers into south, Hidden Valley, those types of areas, and I understand to change it 55 to 45 and keep going back and forth, it's challenging. You can't do that. I'm not as concerned through the Hidden Valley area, but as it comes into the South Meadows area where the new Daybreak development is being cursed to start, and you have those areas around Cyan and the new elementary schools, I would really like to look into that. And one thing I would like to say, in opposition of what Mr. Delgado was saying, is that we have started certain roads at higher speeds and then dialed them back, and specifically Rio Wrangler off of Veterans. It was a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. It is now 35 based upon standards because it was traveling too fast in that area, and so we've had to dial that back within the residents. And so there are challenges. We can do that as a community. I know the city of Reno's done it, the county's done it, and City Sparks. We've all had to adjust speeds based upon growing needs within the community. So I would like to see the speed limits raised to 55 in those areas where it performs as a true connector, so that we are utilizing that road to the true capacity and potential that it needs to be running at. However, as we go into some of those intersections that we've seen out of the South Valley's multimodal study, we really address those, because we don't want to be sending 55-mile-an-hour traffic into either new hard stoplights or where we have crosswalks for kids. And we have seen enough, student fatalities and student accidents in these last few months and into this school year. And so we want to reduce that. And the last thing we want to do, obviously convenience is a big issue, but we don't want to make sure safety is first and foremost our number one priority here. So I want to those are my comments for that this morning. So Mr. Stewart, any other, Commissioner Hartson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I think actually we're all saying the same thing. Those sections of road that have limited access, they act like a freeway. And you can get your speeds up higher, and because they're just limited access. You don't have any pedestrian right-of-ways. We do have it, and this, it could prove to be an issue. You've got the bike path, but for the most part, I think the road can handle those higher speeds. It's not uncommon for roads to have high speeds and then low speeds and then high speeds and then low speeds. It's not an uncommon practice at all. Look at 395 South, where it goes through the towns and the residential areas, and then when they pick the speeds back up. So I think that there's opportunity here in those limited access sections. And I think we're all saying exactly the same thing. I think we're saying, identically the same thing. When you get into those areas where you do have more pedestrian access and pedestrian interface, you slow the traffic down. But in those areas that can handle it, it works well. Here's what I will say, though. Heading north, all it gets you to is the traffic jam faster at Gregg Street. So I came through one afternoon and was backed up a great distance on that road at Gregg Street because of that there's basically a confluence there. So we're going to have to deal with that at some point in order to make the roadway work as it was originally intended. And so that's, raising speeds, going one direction is helpful, but going the opposite direction, again, at certain times, it just, all you do is get there faster and then you sit. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart. Looking for a motion to accept the report. Oh, no action needed. No, we're good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. So what we're going to do in the essence of time this morning, we're going to take the agenda out of order. I am going to move and open item 7.1. And under this is kind of the. I need a motion. We do need a motion?
Yes.
Was it a motion to accept, second? Now, a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Yeah, it has no action required. Why would that be a motion?
It's a motion to move item 7.1.
Oh, a motion to move.
For the agenda.
Oh, thank you.
We thought you were talking about.
I was like, what are you talking about, Dale? Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Dale. We appreciate it. All right, we took a motion. The motion was to take the items out of order. Thank you. All right, so we're going to open 7.1. Mr. Director, you want to open this up for us, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item 7.1 is discussion and possible action to appoint Amy Cummings as the Executive Director or Interim Executive Director, adjust compensation, and provide direction on negotiation of contract terms and/or implementation of recruitment options. As we talked earlier, my last day is going to be December 6th on the books. So the commission, for the last several years, the commission has directed me to implement an agency-wide workforce development and succession plan and process. We've reported on that several times over the years during my evaluation in the annual report. I believe I've successfully accomplished this goal by encouraging management employees who are contemplating retirement to mentor internal staff who have the experience, show a willingness, and are interested in taking on greater risk through promotion. In many cases, the RTC has had internal staff with the requisite experience and interest, and successful internal promotions were made. Examples, and we've seen them today, include the new Director of Public Transportation, kudos for the microtransit, the Director of Administration, Angela Reich, our Engineering Manager, Doug over there, and our Planning Manager, Dan Dunges out there. Consistent with the Commission's direction to implement a workforce and succession planning process and prepare RTC for my retirement, I did appoint Amy as the Deputy Executive Director about 18 months ago. I chose Amy because in my belief she exceeds the qualifications of the current job description and led many important initiatives such as the shared federal framework and our metropolitan planning process, et cetera, et cetera. As the Deputy Executive Director, Amy has assisted me in a wide variety of policy, administrative, and public outreach and financial matters pertaining to the operation of the RTC. Examples include she led the efforts to obtain, execute, and ensure compliance with the Federal Transit Administration, capital investment grant requirements, and obtain the $40 million discretionary funds. Indeed, she shined, I think, brightly in a meeting with K. Jane Williams back in a couple months ago. She's also facilitated updating our procurement policy and procedures. She's played a significant role in the recruitment of key staff. She brainstormed the entire affordable housing effort, including helping with the legislation that was passed recently to dispose of property that could help lead us to partnerships to do that type of thing. I think one area she's also done well is working with UNR and in creating a regional dialogue with NDOT and the surrounding counties and TRPA. I'm recommending appointing Amy as the Executive Director, but I also realize it is the Commission's discretion to debate, discuss, and make its own decision. I also want to point out that at the last board meeting, it was Commissioner/Mayor Smith who asked also for this item to be placed on the agenda. But you do have the option, both under this item and in the next item, to discuss various opportunities or options that you may have. You do have some backup material on Amy. I think it's worthwhile perhaps for either a discussion or if you desire, she could make a presentation. I think whether she's the interim or permanent or whatever role you decide, I think it may be important for us to, or for you to see her background. It sort of dawned on me. One of the things I kind of wish I'd done at some point in the last several years, we had to compile everybody's resume as a matter of the technical capacity determination that the FTA had to make for us to get that $40 million. So we had this nice consultant stylized proposal format with everybody's resume and background and everything. And I should have included that. But anyway, with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my brief overview. And I'll let the commission begin its dialogue.
So, thank you, Executive Director. I appreciate that intro. What we're going to do is have this discussion, and we have the opportunity, the options in front of us as presented in the staff report today, is to appoint Mrs. Cummings as the current Executive Director and provide direction to a negotiation in terms of her employment contract. We can appoint Amy Cummings as the interim Executive Director and adjust the compensation, negotiate the terms until the end of the year of fiscal 20, and then do a performance agreement assessment and decide whether or not permanent employment would be due or conduct a recruitment at that time. Or we can appoint Amy Cummings as the interim Executive Director and negotiate an agreement, adjust the compensation, and then direct staff to bring back an item next month to authorize the recruitment process for the Executive Director position. So what I would like to do at this time is kind of have a discussion. I'm going to kick this off. I believe that we've all received the information about Amy. Amy, you've done a phenomenal job here at the RTC. I have the utmost faith that you can perform and serve as the current interim director and has done a phenomenal job as the deputy director. I have seen you operate in many different facets, and as our planner and head of planning has done a great job with that. As it pertains, though, to this organization and as it is a regional organization, I would feel remiss that I think that it should be the opportunity for everybody to compete. I think that it would be unjust that we don't just sit here, and I appreciate that Director Gibson has performed and gone through a succession plan, has done a wonderful thing for the organization and bringing individuals up through the ranks. But this is, as the leader of an organization, I think that is one of those things that you need to continue to compete for on every level. And we do it at every entity, and we have done it at every entity that I've been part of. And I think that if you have every opportunity and every skill set to really perform in that capacity and compete for that executive director, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be a leading component. A leading competitor in those discussions. But I feel it would be unjust not to give that, and we are an organization of the taxpayers, and I think that we should have that opportunity to open that up to everybody. Those are my opinions and those are my thoughts. So it would be my recommendation that we would appoint her to the interim director, and then immediately start with the proceedings of recruitment and identify a process in which to hire the next executive director. So I'm going to open it up to the board for further discussion. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There
we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had asked that we have an item placed on the agenda to appoint Amy Cummings, the current deputy director, to replace Lee as the executive director. I did this because of my long history with the RTC over 12 years. I want to see the changes Lee and Amy and Jeff Hale and now Brian and Michael Marino have made to continue. When I first got on RTC, I discovered that we faced a number of key challenges. First, we had major issues before the Nevada Ethics Commission that showed RTC wasn't very transparent. Allegations had been brought to that public money was being spent to advocate for fuel tax indexing advisory ballot initiative. This was a serious charge. The Ethics Commission exonerated the board because we didn't know what staff had done. Another challenge we had was our planning program. Our RTP and TIP were stalled in their federal approvals. We could have lost the use of the federal funds. The Pyramid McCarran project was stalled, and the idea that we would improve core roads with multimodal improvements wasn't even thought of. The transit system was a mess. We had to cut routes while we gave raises to drivers because the old pass-through system to the contractor, and we had no control over the service. Last, there was some serious administration issues. NDOT had no voice in our planning decision making, despite what federal law said. Legal counsel did not report to the board, contracts never came to the board, and wage and benefit cost controls didn't exist. Today, we win national awards for our planning practice. We are looking at actually increasing transit service, and Pyramid McCarran, Southeast Connector, Moana Lane, and 4th and Prater are all completed. Virginia Street is under construction. We lead the region with the shared federal framework, and RTC has benefited from the funds. This effort has helped win $100 million. That is $100 million we had of local funds to spend on other projects. A year ago, Lee named Amy as the deputy. This was done because 3 years ago, we asked Lee to start a succession planning process so internal staff could be promoted when qualified, and that included replacing Lee one day. We wanted the RTC to continue along the path that Lee set forth. He named Amy as part of this plan because she was first executive hire. As Director of Planning, she fixed the planning program by reshaping our public involvement process, getting our planning program right with the feds, and building credibility. I have seen Amy deliver a special presence at public meeting that conveys positive image, a caring image, and a willingness to listen, engage, and works with citizens to find solutions. I have heard of each of you suggested we go outside to seek a new executive director, but I haven't heard a compelling reason. We are not at a point for change. I, for one, want to continue the path Lee set, and that is why I want Amy to be the executive director. You know what? We bring a contract back next month and she doesn't perform the way we like, then we terminate her. And that goes for whether she's an interim director or director. We don't have to have a reason to terminate anybody. We have 30 days for cause or no cause. That's simple. We do a recruit and she wins. Then we have wasted money and people's time for no reason. We asked Lee to conduct succession planning, something we do at Sparks, and I think we should follow that succession plan. We owe it to the community, ourselves, and the staffs. And I'm going to break away from this a little bit. In Sparks, we promoted our fire chief not too long ago, and we had 9 previous fire chiefs sitting in the same row that we promoted from within. People in the organization want to know they have that opportunity. Same thing with the police. Our last 5 police chiefs have been promoted from within. It builds that confidence that one day maybe they can, anybody can get in that position. You know, Vaughn, you made the motion to appoint the deputy of the flood project as the new executive director the other day, and I supported you on your motion, but remember, George has only been with the flood project for 6 months. Amy has been the director of planning for 9 years and the deputy for 1.5 years. Why aren't you showing Amy the same respect? She has worked with Lee for the last year and half getting her ready for this position. I don't see the use of making change now. You keep mentioning that you want someone with Lee's presence. You know what? You're not going to find that person. We are all unique, and if you think you're going to find another Lee, you are not. Amy has her own presence, and I've seen it work. Bob, I don't think it's right to say if any is interim, she can't apply for the executive director, and I don't think you said that today, but I know you did that at the county. And Naomi, you think Amy should apply for the job competitively? You think somehow if she's selected through a competition and validates her? I disagree. We do a recruitment and she wins. We have wasted staff time, consultant time, recruiters. Amy's validation of her work is her track record here. And let's face it, not giving Amy a chance now basically is the same as telling her that we don't have confidence in her to do the job and she shouldn't waste her time applying. Don't sugarcoat it. If we don't want Amy, just say so. You know, I'm going to propose an alternative that we do hire Amy, and whether it's interim or as the executive director, let her have the job for 1 year before we go out and recruit. If she's not doing the job, you may be pleasantly surprised that she's doing the job as good as anybody can. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, well, we'll respond if that's what's necessary. Mr. Gibson, I would remind all of us that Mr. Gibson was not the deputy director when we hired him. It was Derek Morris, and Derek was in line to be the next executive director, and yet we went outside and looked for another person and found Mr. Gibson. With respect to allowing Amy to apply, there's no problem with allowing her to apply. I would suggest we do a local search. Let's see who is on our local roster that might just surprise us. Just do a local search first. Put it out for bid, as it were, allow people to apply, appoint Ms. Cummings as the interim deputy director, or the interim director, and I think that that's completely legitimate and works well. With respect to a succession plan, did any of you as board members get to choose who the next deputy director was going to be? Because I'll tell you, I don't think any of us got to choose. And so with respect to that, the director chose the person who he wanted to see move up through the process. I'm not suggesting that Amy's not qualified. All I'm suggesting to you is that we never had an opportunity to be engaged in that. I was told who it was going to be. So I'm fully supportive of appointing Amy as the interim director. I would personally like to see us open it to just a local app or an application process. Don't do any, very, sort of broad reaches. Whomever applies. We might just be surprised. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. I think it's important to note a couple of things. Having spent 20 years in human resources, I have a little bit of experience with recruitment. I think sometimes a process can do one of two things. I think it can put opportunities at the forefront. I think it can sometimes put a chill on an organization. I think RTC has incredible staff. As are represented here today, and the tenure and the length of employment that you all have had, turnover is very disruptive and expensive. So that's not lost on me. And I know with Lee retiring, there's probably a lot of you with a lot of questions and a lot of concern. I don't think anybody's looking to come in and completely reinvent the wheel. The wheel is working well. But I will also say this from having spent 20 years in the private sector. When promoting or searching for an executive, you want to know when you put a person in that position, for the person getting it and for the organization, that they have all been on the same playing field and that the cream rose to the top and you selected the cream. And for Amy's sake or anybody else out there, they should want to compete for it. They should want to be in the process, because I think the last thing this organization wants is to have any sort of cloud of, well, she got it or he got it because. Have it be a transparent and thorough process for all who are interested. That is good human resource process. I don't think that says anything against Amy. I don't think that says anything for anybody else. That's a good process. That's best practice. So that's why I agree. I think she absolutely, Amy, you have done a phenomenal job. I have seen you in action, and you are calm under pressure, and that is tough. You are brilliant and smart, and I value that. I also believe in a good, solid process. And whatever happens at the end of the day, whomever earned it, earned it. And so I am in favor of appointing Amy as the interim and doing a search. What exactly that search looks like and to what degree, I'm open to discussion. But I find it good practice to have everybody compete and select the best candidate.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Commissioner Delgado.
Thank you, Chairman, and appreciate my colleagues' input and perspective. And Amy, you know how much I dearly respect you as a professional and just as a person. It's very, very thoughtful. But I too, just like my colleagues, the chairman and vice chairwoman, think that there's an opportunity here to really showcase in competitiveness with whether local or national who you really are. And I think that's a great opportunity. And I think it's upon us all to make sure that we go out there and showcase that who RTC is and how we can compete and how that looks. And so without beating on this drum even much, much more, I think it'd be great to have you as an interim. Look forward to you applying. Look forward to others applying for the opportunity to lead our RTC into the future. But I don't think we're looking for somebody to go in and make huge changes. Things are working well. So making sure that they work with our staff and with our board in terms of achieving all the goals that we want to. So with me, look at the third option of an interim and then going out in recruitment.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I sit here, and this this report of Amy is full of accolades. Amy, full of accolades. It's got years of experience. There shows dedication and commitment to RTC. And Mr. Mayor, I respectfully disagree with you that I think that just because there's a secession plan and that we've talked about secession and we've had that discussion, those secession plans are built for within the organization that would report exactly to that executive director. And so they can build it within the department, within the group. However, the executive director is an employee of this board, has always been an employee of this board, and has always been to a decision of this board. And you participated in the last hire of the executive director, and every board has that opportunity. And to Commissioner Hartung's decision or comments, we never had the opportunity to interview or have the discussion. We've worked with Amy, but we've never had the opportunity to decide whether or not Amy was going to fulfill the needs of what we look forward going forward. And I said, Amy is a phenomenal individual. I've worked directly with her. She's done great things, and I think that we are going in the right direction, and the staff is an absolute true representation of that. However, to the Vice Chair's comment, to make this a clear and transparent for this organization, because we are a representative of the tax dollars, because we are all elected officials, I think it is our fiduciary responsibility to keep this clear and transparent, open this up, have everybody compete, and make sure the best come and run this organization into its future. And not to make massive changes, but other than to just continue to do the phenomenal work that this organization has done and will continue to do. So, with all the comments being said, at this time I would look to a motion for, I'm going to look for a motion from the board in regards to one of the three options.
Mr. Chair, I do have one more comment, if I can make that.
Sure, Mr. Mayor.
I think that both comments from you and Commissioner Vaughn is disingenuous about we didn't have any say. She's been in that position for over a year now, and nobody's ever said a word, so to say it now. And I've always been an advocate. Instead of spending money going on a search, this goes back to hiring within, spend that money on training so you have people ready to come up through the organization, and that's what we've done with Amy for the last year or so. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, looking for a motion at this time. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. I guess one of my clarifying questions is, Lee, will you be here at the next meeting?
My paperwork at PERS says the 6th, so my intention was not to be at the next meeting.
Okay, I'm just trying to get from a process standpoint, kind of exactly how we.
Well, actually, and you know what, Ms. Reich, you have a presentation, so can you get some presentation in regards to kind of a process that we can lay out in regards for the board and how an interim or selection process would go? Some information for us? Can you provide that for us right now?
That's part of the next item.
That's part of the next agenda item? Okay. Well, Angela, why don't you come up really quick?
Well, maybe Dale can answer this question. Do we need is 7.2 the next, or do we have to have a motion to bring 7.2 forward?
It says the commission may combine 2 or more agenda items.
On motion,
Okay.
on motion, we can do that.
Perhaps we could have a motion to do that, and then Angela could go into, because I thought these two items really are interrelated. And I know Angela has laid out the process that a recruitment.
So you want a
would
motion that
span.
we put them both together?
Hold on.
Yeah.
So we'll get a motion if we want to put them both together. Madam Vice Chair, do you want, what specifically are you trying to get to?
I was trying to understand, and maybe we get to this, I know it's kind of a couple different agenda items. Maybe we just take a motion on 7.1 and determine what the board wants to do from appoint Amy or do a recruitment and get that motion off the table. And then we can move forward from that. Is that the cleanest way?
That's the cleanest way. That's what I would like to do. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion now on 7.1 on what we would like to do in regards to the interim or executive director as it pertains to Amy Cummings. So we'll entertain a motion. Is there a motion on the floor?
I thought she was making a motion.
Yes, I didn't know if any other members wanted to make a motion. I would make a motion to appoint Amy Cummings as the interim executive director. Let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. And bring back bring staff to bring back an agenda item next month to authorize a recruitment.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Hartung.
So under 7.1, under the revised agenda, Mr. Chairman, it says discussion and possible action to appoint Amy Cummings as the executive director or interim executive director, adjust compensation and provide direction on negotiations of contracts and/or implementation of recruitment options. So I don't think we need to have it come back. I think we can do that right now based on the way the agenda is styled.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'm probably stealing Angela's presentation, but there may be some items that may have to come back. For example, a revised job description. You need a possible discussion about entering into a contract if you want to use a recruiter, how much that is, how many are solicited. If it's under 50,000, that can be handled at staff level. If not, then there'll need to be an item back here. So there are a number of ministerial steps for recruitment that would most likely have to come back to the commission either next month or in January as Angela sort of gears up to, to deal with that. So I'm trying to put a caution out there that I don't know that you can wrap everything up with a nice bow today, but you certainly can take the steps necessary to start the recruitment.
All right.
And maybe I'll look to our legal counsel. So here's kind of where I'm coming from. I would like to take as much action and give staff as much direction as is possible today. So I don't know the cleanest way for us to do that.
I think the cleanest way to do that is revise your motion to appoint Amy Cummins as the interim executive director until an actual executive director is named, and then handle all of the
Other details in 7.2.
Exactly.
Okay, so I will retract my initial motion and move to appoint Amy as the interim executive director until a permanent executive director is selected.
Okay, so
I have a motion. So she's removed. She's rescinded her first.
I'll second it again for purposes of discussion because I'm trying to understand the way the agenda is styled, 7.1 and 7.2.
Right. So 7.2, we're going to 7.2 based upon if this motion carries and we move past, we'll go into 7.2 and have a further discussion about what the appointment process would be and the details of that. The recruitment process would be and the details that would be requested and within that recruitment process and what that would look like.
Okay, all right, because I see all of what you just said in 7.1.
We'll deal with that in 7.2. So it will be addressed in 7.2, and it's stylized within the staff report for 7.2. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. So Ms. Cummings, you are now the interim executive director of the RTC upon Mr. Gibson's departure.
Mr. Chairman, I ask Dale a clarifying question.
Yes.
A little bit of humor, maybe. Do we have two executive directors at the moment, or does that motion need to be technically note that she will begin on,
As I put it,
5 p.m., 5:01 p.m. on Friday, the 6th of December?
Yeah, I think that the way I understood the motion is she would be
she will become the director
become
upon.
the executive director upon your vacating the position.
Yes.
She will become the interim executive director at the departure of Mr. Gibson up to the time in which a permanent director is appointed.
Thank you. That way I can sign that speed limit letter.
Well articulated. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, if I may, and I'm not trying to be pedantic here, adjust compensation and provide direction. So we did not adjust the compensation in that motion.
That is correct.
So we can adjust the compensation. And Ms. Wright, can we do that retroactively at the next board meeting? Is that something we could do at the next board meeting, retroactively, and adjust that compensation based upon some conversations with you about that?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Yeah, we can do it at the next meeting.
I was going to say, in our organization, as you know, when we appointed an interim, I believe it came with a 10% raise automatically.
Mr. Chair, Angela, why don't you go over what we do typically in accordance with our policies?
Similar to what Mr. Hartung just said, we do provide a 10% increase for an acting position.
Okay.
And
So,
I believe that's part of the agenda.
Yeah, that is 10% is common, so I mean, it would be,
I would make a motion that we approve the 10% increase in compensation when she becomes the interim executive director.
okay. So there's a 10% interim, there's a motion for a 10% increase for compensation. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay.
Clean that up.
Thank you.
Okay, that's cleaned up. All right, that's done. We're on to 7.2 now. This is a discussion and possible action pertaining to the appointment and recruitment necessary to fill the vacated position of the executive director. Now, each and in every one of your items, I have provided with you an updated staff report, and the way that this should go, and I obviously, we've had a robust discussion about the appointment, the recruitment process. It's important that this organization is run by an individual that has the capacity and wherewithal to lead us into the future. And it's going to take somebody very qualified. And so, Ms. Reich, will you please take us into some possible options of what that would look like in recruiting an executive director?
Yes, thank you. Angela Reich, Director of Administrative Services, for the record. And I'm going to just go right to the slide for recruitment options due to your prior action. And some items for consideration for the board is to determine, would you like internal staff to handle the recruitment? Would you like us to go out for an executive recruitment firm, or something else that we didn't think about as directed? So whatever option you decide upon for recruitment, some items for consideration. You have, I believe, in the prior agenda item, the current job description, and so that could be a starting point, or decide if you are happy with that job description or if you would like any changes, because the job description does have the qualifications that we would be requiring for applicants. Then the second item would be advertisement. How long would you want that open for? What would you like the applicants to submit? And then it comes down to screening. Again, that depends on, I guess, who would be performing the recruitment. In the prior recruitment for Mr. Gibson, the board did appoint a subcommittee, and the Director of Administrative Services did an initial screening, and then the subcommittee interviewed the qualified applicants. And then, again, who would be the initial interview panel, the scoring parameters. I would recommend that you would have the top 3 candidates then come back to the board for an interview and contract negotiation, a possible appointment.
Great. So in my opinion, obviously, the city of Reno and Washoe County have both gone through this process in the last few years. This is in my opinion, as the largest metropolitan planning organization here within the region, and transportation being at the forefront of every development or every start of every community, this is something that would pertain to an individual that knows issues as it pertains to federal, being that a majority of our funding comes from the federal government, and most, not only from construction, but also transit dollars, state issues as it pertains to legislative process, and then also local and regional relationships with all 3 entities, relationships with community partners, and state agencies, so that we can continue to provide the service that we've done. So in my opinion, I believe that RTC, and Ms. Reich, tell me if I'm wrong, I believe that you're quite competent of handling an internal search.
Yes.
Handling it internally, would you agree with me that you could conduct that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And that that this would go out, and how would you disseminate? I mean, could you disseminate that even on a national level? Are there channels that you have the capacity to do that on a national level to get the
Yes, there are a number of associations that we can post, as well as, let's say a monster.com, but there are a number of professional associations, APTA, American Planning Association. There's a number that we could just put up a wide net out.
I just want to make sure that would be, to the mayor's point, if we can keep that in-house and not spend an exorbitant amount of money on a national search firm, I think that's important, and that we get the same results from that. And then timeline, I believe that at least a 120-day timeline to get some, being that it is the holidays, if we get this opened up in a timely manner, to get something by the first of the year that we can look at and start the process with the interview process and compile, I think that would be important. But that would be my opinion as a 120-day timeline for an application process. And then I absolutely agree with the remainder, the screening, the initial, an interview panel construct, and then a full interview in front of the board. So I think I'm okay with all the remainder of those three. I'll open it up for discussion from the other board members. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Reck, do we currently have a description, a job description, and list of duties for the executive director?
Yes, it should be an attachment in
Right?
7.1.
Exactly. So, I mean, most of this is already done, to my point. I'm actually trying to put this on record. I understand completely. I mean, I don't think we need to hire a national search firm by any stretch, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair. I think that we just open this up. Ms. Cummings applies. She may very well be the very best applicant, but I think we owe it, and I love your comments about transparency. I love this, and I think it's a simple solution, bringing it back to the board, bringing the applicants back to the board, and just basically do an interview process and go from there. I mean, I think it's a fairly simple, I don't know how long the list is going to be of actual qualified applicants who can run an organization like RTC. That's going to be the question, but I know that we have a few people, even here locally, who may very well apply. So I'm not even convinced, 120 days is a good amount of time. I'm not sure whether we need 120 days. But what I would also caution us to is, would we scare away some applicants who would potentially apply as soon as that list became public, and it could be a problem in the organization that they currently serve in or work for.
All right. Appreciate that. Madam Vice Chair, hold on a second. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. I think there's an opportunity to just allow the experts in the room. Angela, certainly you are an expert in this area. You know the channels, you know the wording, to work with the chair to get recruitment materials out as soon as possible in the appropriate, venues and publications, et cetera. I would say you don't want an open recruitment to probably linger more than 30 days.
Okay.
In other words, I think we could motion today for you to work with Angela, get something out as quickly as possible, bring back the interview process at the next meeting. I don't think we need to.
No, we don't have to
We don't have to deal with that today. But my fear is you don't want something sitting out there as an open position for a really long time, because then somebody has applied, and if they don't hear something back kind of quickly with a process, then they kind of lose interest and they kind of go on to something else, and you could lose some applicants. So you don't want to leave it sitting out there for too horribly long. Okay. So I think between the chair and Angela, I think we could get a process. And Lee's still here.
Mr. Chair, if I make a couple of personal comments, having gone through recruitment. One, there was one day I got a call that said, your name's going public. And I was in the private sector, so I know my public sector colleagues may have some protections with respect to employment, and I'm sure we may see some public sector folks, but if there are private sector folks, you want to make a quick decision. Don't let them linger. I know I got this phone call from New York City that says, I didn't know you were unhappy. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is my wife's hometown. So, but what's that?
It's not a matter of being unhappy to apply.
No, correct. But do be mindful of people's, and I will comment, no offense to, Angela wasn't in charge of that recruitment, but I did send in my letter, and I waited a long time. It seemed like a long time before I heard back. So I would encourage an expeditious process.
Okay. All right. So, seeing any further discussion from the board, Madam Vice Chair, you seem like you had a motion kind of that you want to put together, and I know.
My motion would be to, I will eventually get this microphone down. My motion would be for the chair to work with Ms. Wright to compile and distribute as soon as possible advertisement materials for the executive director position through the channels in which you are an expert in identifying, and to bring back at the next board meeting some options as they relate to an interview process.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Ms. Reich, you and I have some work to do.
Thank you.
All right, you have to leave.
I gotta go.
All right, so Mr.
No, I just moved it half an hour, so I have a little bit of time.
Okay, Mr. Director, we're back to 6.1.
6.1. It's back in time.
Ms. Cummings.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you as the interim director and keeping things on a smooth transition during this leadership change. But this item, I am looking for your approval and input on our public and agency outreach process and schedule for the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Our schedule has us set up to have the plan completed and approved by FHWA and FTA by May of 2021. We anticipate having a draft in front of you about this time next year, about a year from now. Of course, as you know, the Regional Transportation Plan is what identifies the investments we're going to make in transportation over the long term. This process is going to be fairly similar to the last two RTPs that we worked on. Of course, we'll be in front of you every month and our advisory committees. We are also hoping to get on the agendas for your home jurisdictions over the next couple of months. We want our first stop to be making sure we identify those priorities, needs, concerns early on so we can integrate those in as quickly as possible. We also will be inviting your staff at your home jurisdictions to participate in an agency working group that will meet about every other month and help us work through all the nuts and bolts of the issues working through the RTP. A new group that we want to form is called an Inter-County Transportation Working Group. We want this group to get together quarterly over the next year, and this will include our regional partners at Lake Tahoe, Carson City, Story County, Lyon County, and northwestern Nevada as we work through the regional growth issues that we have. Of course, we'll have our usual community planning workshops, be out there on social media, and we will incorporate the results of a lot of the studies that are going on right now. We're identifying a lot of great projects through our South Meadows and UNR studies, as well as our ADA transition plan, Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan. We don't want to recreate that work in the RTP. We want to incorporate that, as well as advanced mobility in our affordable housing study. And probably one of the most fun parts of the RTP is getting to do our issue-based workshops and roundtables. This is our list of the items that have been brought up to our attention so far. Of course, safety, youth transportation issues. We want to be working with a couple of local schools to get student input. A circulation plan for downtown Reno, looking at the North Valley's network build-out, and in the industrial road network in Sparks, as well as economic development in our transit vision. So again, welcome your input on this moving forward, and we're looking forward to getting started.
Great, thank you, Ms. Cummings. Any questions from the board in regards to the 2050 RTP? All right, looking for a motion to approve. A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. We are on to item 6.2, approve the RTC federal priorities and provide directing accordingly. Ms. Cummings.
Thank you. Amy Cummings, RTC. This is an item that is valued by our congressional delegation as they move forward with reauthorization. The list is fairly extensive in your packet. I just wanted to highlight a couple of items that are priorities for us. One is expanding the Safe Routes to School program, so it allows us to use those funds on high school as well as K through 8. We also want to fully fund the Highway Trust Fund and address the rescission that was mentioned earlier. Support joint development initiatives through the Federal Transit Administration, and then, of course, funding for our major projects on our bus facilities, as well as Spaghetti Bowl, I-580, I-80, and Pyramid Highway. And our team is
Not here.
actually not still here, so.
United moved the flight up from 2 o'clock to 1 o'clock.
Yeah. All right. Any discussions about the federal priorities for Mr. Gibson?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank the folks who have already left and gotten on an airplane, and they helped us think this through. And I do want to just point out for Christina and Amy, the highway priorities. I think those are going to be something we need to pay attention to and move forward on. Also, the bus maintenance facility, this is sort of a humorous but serious issue. So thanks to the EIS, our beautiful Villanova facility will be disappearing one day. My advice, having done a maintenance facility in Las Vegas 100 years ago, you might want to start thinking about that planning process now. We certainly, I know there's a 10 or 12 year period where before that portion of the improvements may start, but you take a 2 or 3 year site selection study, find a site, then you're going to have a couple years of design and environmental work. And sometimes when you're working in industrial areas where these types of facilities go, that environmental process can take a little longer. So now all of a sudden you're at 6 years, and then you've got to go into final design. I would encourage the commission to move quickly on that item.
All right. All right. Seeing no further discussion there, we are on to item 7.3. I thought we had an motion. All right. Looking for a motion to accept the RTC federal priorities. I have a motion. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. We're on to 7.3, legal issues. Mr. Ferguson.
No legal issues today. I would like to say, Lee, it's been a great opportunity and very great pleasure to represent the RTC while you were executive director and worked on many legal issues together. So thanks, and I certainly wish you the very best in retirement.
Mr. Chairman, I have to give a shout back, and Dale, I've enjoyed working with you, but I have to tell you, I still miss John Fowler very much.
Understood.
John was our first counsel. Mr. Smith would remember him. John passed away, about a year ago? 6 months ago?
Yeah.
And I still miss John to this day. The Southeast Connector and the infamous agreement with the city of Reno with a meeting between Mr. Cashel and Mr. Smith. And remember that? And Mr. Shipman, something Mr. Shipman and I still, that goes into my comment about this stuff is wilder than fiction. So anyway, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, before we move to the public comment, can we open up 4.3 one more time? I neglected to ask Director Swallow a question.
4.3. Oh, yes. We can reopen 4.3.
Thank you, sir. Director Swallow, and I'm so sorry, I had it all written down here. Recently, there have been some trucks along where it's basically a cut in the hill going out to Spanish Springs, and they've been, looks like they're doing some core samples up there, and I've had some folks ask me what the purpose of that was, and I'm not sure whether it's to, so that we can do a wider cut through that area, or if it even is NDOT doing those samples up there. And they've been doing it both on the east and the west side of Pyramid. And that would be essentially before Disc and after Queen Way, where it cuts through the hill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Seeing nothing further, we'll close 4.3 and we can break to the board. We are on to item 8, public comment. I do have Ms. Rosenberg signed in. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. For the record, Sandra Rosenberg. I'm speaking as an individual today, not on behalf of the Nevada Department of Transportation, although it's impossible to ever fully take that hat off. But since my name was brought up earlier today, I couldn't miss this opportunity to say some things about Lee as well. You mentioned our intellectual sparring, and what some of you may not know is our very first professional interaction was one such spar. Prior to my current position, when I was just, sort of mid-level planner at NDOT, we were working on an agreement with the RTC to update the travel demand model. And through various other interpretations, there was some disagreement between NDOT and the RTC. And we had one of those discussions, and I think we both stumped each other a little bit. We got it resolved, things got updated, and after that initial interaction, which by the way scared the bejesus out of me, Lee called me up and said, "You're my go-to at NDOT now, because you're not afraid to fight with me." So that has led to years of intellectual sparring and sharing of information. Lee, I consider you one of my mentors. I've learned a tremendous amount from you, and I think I've learned that because I'm not afraid to spar a little bit. But you certainly have a ton of experience in different areas than maybe my background is, and I really appreciate your willingness to call me and sometimes teach me some things and have those discussions. So I also want to acknowledge the tremendous team that you have created. You've hired some amazing, tremendous people. Certainly Amy not the least of that, and we look forward to continuing this great working relationship. The team, the people are really what it's all about. You have a great executive director, you have a great interim executive director. They are great in part because of the team that they have built around themselves, and so I just want to make sure I acknowledge that as well. That's a tremendous leadership skill is filling out that team. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. And by the way, thank you for Maria and Schwen.
All right, seeing no further public comment, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Final member items, any member items for any future board items? Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you. My question is with respect, and it's potentially for Keolis and with respect to transit. Do we have a program whereby employees can offer suggestions for performance improvements? We had a bus driver who came up and said that he potentially, he saw some flaws in the system. Sometimes it's easy to point out flaws, but perhaps he's got some suggestions.
Okay, we're not going to stylize. What we'll do is we'll bring it back for a future item. So
yes, exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly. So I guess in that same vein, in that same question, do the employees understand that they have the opportunity to give these suggestions? Because I feel like when employees come up and make public comment, they feel like it's a last-ditch effort, that they've not been listened to for whatever reason. And so those are my comments.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Hartung. And I think we are going to be stylized here in the next couple meetings to have Keolis come back, give an update, do a transit discussion, have a little bit more robust discussion about routes and different things like that, and as it pertains and operation, and timing. So we'll come back and we'll put an item on the next and a couple future meetings for Keolis to come back and present about transit.
And Mr. Chairman, that was not a comment about how Keolis is running it. It's just a question, do we have a methodology in place that employees can participate in process improvements? Thank you.
No, absolutely. Any other further comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, my one final comment is I just want you all to know I don't not just consider you my bosses, I consider you my friends. And I know we've all tussled and rustled and hustled and bustled, but that's what you do when you're friends.
Yep.
And same goes for the folks in the audience.
People say all the time, I fight better with my friends than I do with my enemies. So, and I want to go back one thing. I do want to have the final comment tonight. I think Congressman Porter said it best. This is not a retirement. This is a graduation. We know Lee will never leave the RTC. Who will be haunting us. They'll have to name something after him because he will be somewhere at all times. But leaders are true pioneers. They're the individuals that lead and craft the way organizations, regions, and paths forward are defined. And to find an individual like Lee Gibson, who has led an organization like this and been a true pioneer about how we've done things here in the North for a lot of years. We wouldn't have the roads, we wouldn't have the organization, we wouldn't have the transit, we would without Lee, honestly, in my opinion, and that's being humble. But transportation is the forefront of everything, and that's why I always say we are the regional NPO. We do lead the discussion when it comes to that, and he has always done that, and he's built a great team and a great organization. And as I look out over all of you, I can see the dedication that he's instilled and the culture that he's brought forward, and that's a huge testament. So, Lee, as our final sign-off today, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We will miss you, but we know you're not going far. So without any other further objections, we are adjourned, everybody. Thank you very much.